Pikmin is a series I've been vaguely aware of in the back of my mind, but never had the opportunity to play. And I'm not sure how that never happened because my first console was the GameCube, and the first game I ever played was Chibi Robo, a game about a little robot saving a family from falling apart by blankly staring them into a therapy session, and laser blasting fucking robot spiders to save the planet from ecological collapse. You know, just an average Tuesday for the guy. Gotta love Japan sometimes, huh? So how did Pikmin never so much as cross my save card? Pikmin, at least the first one, has a very similar premise. Little guy running around with a timed day to find stuff and repair something broken to get back to his loving family. And if you really want to be pedantic, the HD ports have time travel in them too, so that's another comparison to Chibi right there. The Pikmin series has only ever really been in my realm of understanding since January of 2024, when I played all 4 games, not you, in rapid succession to deal with the stress of my senior year of college. Before that, it was basically this one scene from the Subspace Emissary, and let's just say it doesn't paint Olimar in the best light. After that, I never played Olimar unless I died as Captain Falcon, because why the hell would I? I only knew Falcon from Melee, and he has a much more fun moveset and personality, but that scene is all the focus Olimar gets. So while I was confused as to who he was, I was never interested to go looking because Sakurai or some programmer has their bug up their ass about Miyamoto made him out to be a huge fucking pussy who's afraid of his own shadow, which is even more confusing now given that I know Olimar's character, and that's not him at all, as we'll discuss later. But I wanted to bring that up given how that singular impression is what colored my view of at least the series' main character up until this year. I have no nostalgia for this series, no love from fond memories at school, nothing like that. But I still feel the childlike awe I did playing Chibi Robo or Mario Sunshine, and I think that's something that's hard to capture unless done right. And Shigeru Miyamoto is nothing if not good at capturing childhood the way he does. So I want to sit down and tell you my feelings about these games, the stories, the characters, and overall, all my takeaways from these lovely plant men. So let's do as I usually do and pick some men as we explore the rich world of PNF error code. This is a Pikmin retrospective. Pikmin 1 is a very simple game, very tightly written and endlessly replayable. A lot of people compare this to Luigi's Mansion, as it's something that encourages you to try again to get better, faster, and more strategic about everything you're doing in the game. Both have 4 zones, have small enemies that don't really pose a threat and are more just obstacles in your way, and typically only has 1 boss per zone, albeit your mileage on that point of comparison may vary. I can see how that's made, but personally I don't really see it beyond the base similarities. Luigi's Mansion is more about puzzle solving and figuring out which ghost-shaped thing is hiding which key-shaped hole. Pikmin 1 is more just about time management. At some point, you're going to have to optimize your time well. In this game, you only have 6.5 real-world hours before the game ends, so what you do in that time is up to you. Luigi's Mansion is just, hey, go get him. If you died, no big deal, you just have to walk back essentially. The other thing that sets them apart is tone. Luigi is more a silly, spooky game that deals with the concept of a mystery in tandem with establishing Luigi's new personality and cast of side character. He gets more in the sequel, but right now he's just got the old man. Pikmin is just Olimar. He has no one to interact with and no one to bounce ideas off of. The only sense of camaraderie he gets in the first game is the elation and safety he feels with his Pikmin. He just wants to get home, and they are something akin to a child in his mind who want to help. Our story begins with Captain Olimar and his beloved ship, the SS Dolphin, before it gets donked by a meteor. And something I like about this cutscene is the lack of sound effects. It's more a mood piece that only has the music to tell you how to feel, like that episode of Buffy or The Fairly OddParents. Olimar crashes, lands 5 fucking feet from his ship with a fully intact spacesuit. Jeez, go buy a space lottery ticket when you get home.
Foreshadowing.
He wakes up and assesses the damage while trying to figure out where the fallen parts to his ship are, and trying not to freak out about the fact he's got a month on this planet before he dies of the deadly oxygen. You know, something I like about this game is the rather tongue-in-cheek nature of its premise. A little guy crashes on what we know to be a supposedly abandoned Earth, and he's allergic to the thing we all need to live. That's cute. It is an annoying staple of Nintendo that none of their games are voice acted, but unlike other big titles in the company, the main character of this game actually has thoughts and a personality and shit he wants to accomplish. A lot of Nintendo characters are really just boring because the want is save the princess, eat something, smash pots, be part burb. You know, typical baseline motivations. Olimar has tons of personality, and as is the trade-off of dealing with the same character for 2 decades, his personality has shifted throughout the years, but we'll get to that in those games. But here in the first one, he's just very curious, contemplative, and rather reflective of what he's witnessing. As the game goes on, he talks more about the things the player does in the first person. So say you see a Pikmin die by being eaten, he will then write about it in that day's log. The game has tutorial screens, but those are also written by Olimar to himself as if he's thinking out loud, which is very humanizing. The end screens though are more explicit in case the player is having a hard time or didn't notice something that caused a Pikmin's death. Same thing with the in-game clock. If you're getting near the deadline, he starts to worry if he needs every part or if he'll even have time to find them all. Very strong stuff for such a simple motivation of not wanting to die and see his family. Anyway, I get up and look around the impact site when I come across this thing in the ground and oh my god, it's alive! Kill it with fire! Well, that didn't seem to work. So out of sheer curiosity, Olimar names the thing an onion and notices this little leaf thing sticking out of the ground. We pluck it, showing us the first of many, many little bastards we will captain in this series. This is the titular bitchular itself, the Pikmin, so named after the Pick carrot on Olimar's home planet. The red variant, to be specific. We'll find and discuss the type differences when we get to them, but right now all you need to know is that they are red and they have a long schnoz. We begin gathering them up and oh god, I think I'm gonna be sick. Whose decision was it to make them look like uncased sausages when they're not being commanded? I demand to know, because it is the worst possible decision. Thank god the sequel stopped doing that. That is the single worst choice this game ever made. The way you get more Pikmin is by throwing them at these numbered pellets, which if they match the color you want them to make, they produce double the amount, and enemy corpses, which just go to the onion of the dominant color holding them. So if an enemy takes 3 Pikmin to carry it, it will produce 3 Pikmin, and if it's being carried by 2 yellows and a red, it'll give you yellows. The max number of Pikmin you can get on the first day, as far as I'm aware, is 25. And we stumble upon a box in our way, which we lean on so that it'll move out of our way for our conveniently placed engine. Yay! My question is, how did this part land here? Did it like fall out of the sky as we were crashing or something? Because it's barely 50 feet away. And yes, I am aware that Olimar is 3/4 of an inch tall. I don't care. Saying inches or centimeters sounds weird. It's all relative anyway. I know I'm spending a lot of time here, but the basics are kinda important as they're the foundation for every game. The Pikminions carry the thing back to the ship, allowing me to leave the planet for the night, with them hovering over me like a needy parent. We're told about the impending deadline and our number of ship parts that are left, theoretically letting you get a part a day. Aside from the fact that one part takes me at least 2 days, and that you're also going to see how easily this game is navigated once you understand 2 major things. Blue Pikmin slap, and bomb rocks are sexy. The next day, we get access to the Forest of Hope. Given that it's the only place we can go, we land there and find that we're walled in. But have no fear, for the tactic of literally slamming your face into a brick wall hasn't failed me yet. Something I like is that when you get enough Pikmin leveled up to flower by eating nectar, they go fucking ham, man, like headbangers at a metal concert. It's so funny. And it makes a cute cylinder effect. I had nowhere else to put that in, I just thought it was neat. Here, we're introduced to our first enemy type, the Bulborb. Everyone talks about how dumb it is that the small ones are just mini Bulborbs rather than children, and yeah, they're right, that is dumb. But I kinda get the idea. Showing you that things like mushrooms just started walking like that fish did all those billions of years ago is interesting. I mean, we have dwarf people and we don't just consider them children, do we? No, we treat them as shitty as we treat non-dwarfism adults, as do we here. Doesn't matter if it's a parent, baby, child, man, woman, I don't care. You see these things, you kill them on sight, cause I got stuff to do and I hear enough screaming children in my nightmares. So kill them before they eat your children, you silly oval-shaped man. Something I find interesting about this area in particular is the first part is right next to your base, but it's near a few dwarf Bulborbs sleeping, so my first thought typically is to kill them and take one or both back to the ship to bolster my numbers. I'll get more into parts later, but for right now I'm just gonna list them as we go for the sake of a checklist. The first part is the Eternal Fuel Dynamo. I have everyone carry it home and then proceed onward to find another thrashing wall, leading to more Bulborbs that show just how button mashy this game is. There is a swarm mechanic, but given that smaller creatures die in one direct hit, and bigger guys will shake off your Pikmin and eat them before they can kill it, it's just easier to spam A like Kingdom Hearts 2 before it, and then use the swarm to have the kids carry it off to be converted. After that, we find the Yellow Onion, leading me to spend the rest of the day getting more yellow Pikmin.
Look at my giant ears.
And blowing up bombable walls. Every Pikmin has two functions that is unique to it. Reds are immune to fire and deal 1.5 damage to enemies. Yellows can be thrown higher and carry bomb rocks. Remember this, it will become maddeningly inconsistent later what these little yellow fuckers specifically can do. And blues can go in the water and save drowning non-blues as well. One passive skill, one active skill as I like to put it. The blues saving the others is kinda pointless since I could just whistle them out, but I see the intent. Blues as the franchise goes on don't really change much, and with how much water there is in later games, it makes sense why water became their defining ability since that in and of itself makes them an asset. Reds also really haven't changed. Fire and damage are the only strings to their bows, but unless I need them for fire damage, I always prefer to have blues in this game, and especially 3 and 4. Before I move on, I should address the clock. Earlier I mentioned this game ends after 6.5 hours, and that's because you get 29 in-game days comprised of 13.5 minutes. Why not an even 15? I don't know, but whatever. This keeps it so that you aren't just blitzing through an area in a single day. You have to somewhat think about what time you're wasting and the things you're doing so you can get off this planet. The clock is more of a set reminder, and now that all 4 games are on the Switch, it lets players have a bite-sized play session that can get more out of a car ride than a single day session back on the GameCube. Oh yeah, I need to mention this since it kinda does matter. I got the Switch bundle of Pikmin 1 and 2 for mine and Red's anniversary, and the nice thing is that unlike something like Bayonetta 1 or 2, both games are on one cartridge, which was very helpful for getting footage. With that out of the way, I bomb a wall down, and remember when I said bomb rocks are sexy in this game? They do more than half damage health to a Bulbor. That's amazing. We learn about the field limit of 100 Pikmin, which I think was due to hardware limitations and has just been a staple ever since. And something to note about this port is that it adopts something I like about Pikmin 3, and it's the color of the object carry need and its current carry count. Before, these were blue and red, and kinda confusing to get a feel for what they meant. Now, they mimic 3 in that they're gray until the limit is met, and then match the color of the Pikmin or are white depending on if it's a ship part. Something else they implemented from 2, I think, was the ability to cycle between Pikmin now, as opposed to the originals where you just kinda had to grab the nearest one to Olimar, or separate them by color and whistle the squad you want. So that feature's nice. We end the day with a few more yellows and set out for the night. The next day is more of the same, getting more yellows spawned and ship parts, since each area is unlocked after a certain amount of parts are collected, meaning you can't just go to the final area. You have to do them in a linear order, but the way you tackle them is up to you. Again, kinda like Kingdom Hearts 2 when I say it out loud. Linear open worlds, as Super Butterbuns would say, and I think that applies well here. The next day, we open up the northern part of the map by the ship and gather the whimsical radar, the extraordinary bolt, and the Nova Blaster, giving me 5 out of 30 parts, meaning we have enough to access the Forest Navel. That is such a weird name. Like, I get it, but still. We land in this deep, sunken-in, crater-like cave filled with mystery, danger, wonder, salvation, and possibly hope. But I ignore all that and immediately turn around to go play in a puddle because we just got the MVP.
Fish people.
Seriously, I know I brought this up earlier, but from this point onward, blues are more important than reds or yellows until the final boss. All three are good to have in a pinch, but blues can get the job done just as well and don't have to avoid half the goddamn map. An excellent example shows up right at my favorite child's doorstep, as a bread bug waddled up to steal a pellet and take it to its nest. Sending a Pikmin after it makes it a tug of war, but if you send two Pikmin, it's just them dragging the bug until it gets sucked up into the onion, killing the thing instantly and having it drop the space float. This is the only enemy like this in the game, and I don't know why it's here. And yes, there is an entire area devoted to these things in later games. And no, it's not fun. Cute as hell, but not fun. I get my blues up and have them take the float back to the ship while I scope out the area with their siblings. The yellows and I find bomb rocks and clear a wall, and I send the blues to carry the first of my 2 iron jets back to the ship. Something I like is that as the ship gets more parts, it starts to repair itself. Not a whole lot at first, but it's an accumulative effect, letting you see your progress visually so that at the end, when it's all said and done, you feel like you really accomplished something as opposed to just sticking duct tape on the hull. In addition to the thrashing walls, there's also thrashing bridges. And I'm not gonna lie, it's fastest to just have all 100 do this at once, but boy is it boring keeping an eye on them. It also eats up a bit of the day, but it's worth it so you don't let them die. The next day we run into a fiery blowhog. The blowhog line is fucking annoying in every game, but 1 and 2 especially has them just constantly attack with no break unless they shake you off. The fiery ones are the easiest since you have reds, but still not fun. Same thing with these fucking frogs. Here in 1 they're fine to deal with if you swarm them, but if you don't, then god they're a pain. I'll have more to say on them in 2. Next we find the gravity jumper, make more pathways, kill enemies, and end the day with the automatic gear. Day 6 has us break down more rock walls and fight the beady longlegs. And just to save you guys some trouble, you are going to lose Pikmin here. The harsh light and angle make it so hard to tell where it will step, so it's just best to not care and power through. This is also one of those times that yellows are beneficial since its weak spot is high off the ground. It does give us the guard satellite though, so that's helpful. Next, we have the puff stool, which can turn your Pikmin into zombies essentially, but otherwise it's not that big a deal. Swarm it and then toss them on its body, but then leave when it starts to inhale. Not all that challenging. This thing drops the Omega Stimulator, which is essentially the ship's wings. Next up are 2 of my favorite parts to get, because it's one of the only puzzles that require all 3 colors to get them. One is the Libra, which needs you to toss yellows up on 2 high ledges, blues to build a geyser that lets you get on the first ledge, and reds to carry it back through the fire. The second is the analog computer, and it's very much the same. Need blues to get it out of the water, and reds to carry it back. Not very complicated, but is at least still a nice bit of thought that was put into this as far as I can tell. That leaves us with 1 part to get here at the end of day 7, but that's fine. I like having a day or 2 to just buff numbers, and this part isn't very hard to get, it's just surrounded by wollywogs. And like I said earlier, if you have enough, then yeah, they aren't much of a problem. So day 8 is just the anti-doxin filter and grinding a bit, nothing too complicated. Day 9 has us go back to the Forest of Hope, since I like to sweep an area best I can once I have the tools I need. We get the Sagittarius and the Shock Absorber before dealing with the Armored Cannon Beetle. This is one quote-unquote boss in this game, but I think it's just a normal enemy tucked away somewhere, since they use it later too. The beady longlegs is more of a boss to me since it's the only one in the game, but the series kinda nerfs that and makes 20 billion versions of it and shake up the formula, or do what Pokemon does and makes the matches take longer to do the same fucking thing. The beetle has a simple gimmick once you know what to do. Spam A at it so that when it starts inhaling at you, you'll clog its airway, exposing its back where you can then deal some damage. Hell, I'm pretty sure I've gotten this thing dead in 1 cycle before. In any case, it's guarding, not even holding, the radiation canopy, which is basically Olivar's cockpit dome. We gather up our numbers and head out. The next day, we come back for the last part and deal with this box and 3 Stagrets. Again, people call them a boss, but the game throws 3 of them at you at once, so I'd say that's more of a normal enemy with a gimmick. People really want this game to have boss fights for some reason, when I feel that defeats the point. Pikmin is resource and time management. Bosses are endurance battles, often wars of attrition. It makes sense why they just do multiple enemies, because that takes less time and you can tackle them individually. I beat the 3 chickens by aiming for the white parts of their head, and leave after gathering the final part of the area, the Geiger counter. And for day 11, I decided to go back to the impact site to bolster my numbers and get the positron generator. The only noteworthy thing to mention about this area is the boss that spawned since I was on an odd day. The Gulax, which is one of the only 3 things in this game I would call a boss, is a game of pool with itself. Essentially, have it chase Olimar around while chucking blues at it, and then run into the opposite direction to make the 2 balls slam together. Otherwise, it's not really noteworthy outside of its design, which I will admit is cool. Day 12 has us go to the penultimate area, the Distant Spring. And I'm not gonna lie, I both love and hate this area. It's big, mostly water, and it's got a decent amount of parts, but it's mainly the enemies that bother me. Like the Puffy Blowhog, which is just a jackass who blows air on your Pikmin to deflower them, and that's it! It is solely a spite-based creature, and I hate it. There are bull bears, which are like the red Bulborbs, but just more aggressive and will kill everything in a matter of seconds if you can't kill them fast enough. The snatch bug that throws Pikmin into the ground, these water drumples, which are just the water equivalent of bull bears, and that's not even getting into the yellow Wollywog, which is like the gray one from earlier, but just more aggressive, and can't be stun locked. It's not that much more deadly, but it's certainly not fun either. The armored cannon beetle is back, I see, and then there's the smoky prog.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
I didn't fight him. No, seriously, this thing is optional and only spawns before day 15, and if you piss it off like I did, you have to go out of your way to irritate it, which then leads it to stalk your base. And after the horror stories I'd heard about it between my first playthrough and my recording playthrough, I dropped the part I was holding at the time and just went, nope, I'll go do other things and get that in the morning, which I felt was a productive plan. As for the parts here, this area is more puzzle based on how you get them. Like the first part I got, the repair type bolt, I had to throw my Pikmin up on a ledge and then use the swarm feature to get them to grab it down off the ledge. The massage machine was practically a stealth mission since I just walked on by with it like it was no big deal. The glow-on drive was getting a bridge built, the interstellar radiator was just inside a blowhog for some reason, the zirconium rotor was more or less a guarded princess behind a thrashing wall. The UV lamp sucks though because of the narrow ledge you gotta walk them down, and Jesus, they fell off this thing so many times. This cannon beetle was holding the bow spurt, which is ironically also a top ship part, this being the point. Hell, the pilot seat was just sitting on a stump, and on my first playthrough it blended in so well I didn't even know it was there. Then the second ion jet is just on this random ledge. I just sent them to deal with that, the path was clear. And finally, this last part. The Kronos reactor is really cool to me because it makes you use something that would become a staple of the franchise, Candy Pop Buds. These things transform one Pikmin type into another. In this game, it's basically unlimited, but that got changed later. For this puzzle, you need to take 20 blues, throw them up on this ledge, change them to yellows, throw them down to this little shoreline, get them to get the part, which I ran into a glitch here, one that was annoying in the moment, but funny in hindsight, and then turn them back into blues. I say save this for last because it will take you quite a bit of time to get there and back, and kill everything on the way. It's not difficult, just time consuming, and I like that in a game like this. Even though I have more than 10 days, I still feel that pressure, and Pikmin 1 is very good at keeping that force on you. Not threatening, just omnipresent and looming. And for a game as short as this, I think that's important. The last part is tucked away in a separate area called the Final Trial. Yeah, that's not ominous at all. What this area is essentially a boss arena locked behind Pikmin type specific obstacles. Reds need to run through fire to push a box, blues need to walk in water to build a bridge, so that yellows can blow up a stone wall after being thrown high to grab some bomb rocks. After that, this is essentially a hallway to the final boss of the game, Emperor Bulblax. This thing is mean. He's an asshole. And yes, I did gather as many bomb rocks as I could and blew him up from the inside out. This thing's a monster. I'm not fighting that thing so close to salvation. What are you, nuts? I don't have much to say about him right now besides, yeah, he's hard even with the method I used, but later games include him, so he's more a good point of comparison than anything there. With that said, once you beat him, you feel this weight lift off of you as he spawns your piggy bank.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in which
Yeah, we risked our lives so Olimar can get his money back. Not that money's not important, but when we get to the second game, this becomes kinda a weird detail to add. But as it stands, we get the thing back to our ship, see the Pikmin off, and head home to our inevitable sequel. And that's Pikmin 1. And I gotta say, I loved this game. It's challenging, but not terribly hard. It keeps you engrossed, there's multiple ways to do everything, just endless scenarios to build upon. And while most runs will start the same, they won't always get the same parts in the same order, and that's kinda neat. It lets you see what everyone prioritizes. Do you work for what's nearest, or do you want to work on what's most likely to kill you to easiest? Strategy is important in games like this, and I find it interesting how people didn't like this when the game came out. Now, yes, I am playing the baby Switch port, with save scumming and letting you skip to sunset and switching Pikmin on the fly, but I feel like those things aren't going to make the game completely different, but less frustrating than it could have been. I'm not in a game for how hard it is, I'm in it for mechanics, story, and character. If it's too hard, I get frustrated, but I've never found something to be too easy to have fun with. In fact, it makes me want to make it more challenging by setting limits. But let's get down to brass tacks, the ship parts and Olimar. Honestly, the parts seem kinda weird as to what is and isn't mandatory. There are 30 ship parts, but you only need 25 of them to escape. But it's not any 25, it's specifically these 25, and the ones in blue text are optional. How you're supposed to know this on a first playthrough is beyond me, but that's not my biggest problem. It's the items that are mandatory that I don't get. Like a bolt you basically say was sold to you as a scam is important, but a fucking laser beam isn't. I refuse to believe that. The Libra and Sagittarius, I get why those are important. Even if they don't do anything, they were a set of twin gifts from his kids that have a special tie to them. Those are more important than the engine to any worthwhile father. It's mainly the descriptions of these things that are the problem. Some just seem unimportant, but at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. I think maybe swapping a few on each list would make more sense, but in all honesty, all the parts do is affect your ending. There are 3 endings: the 100% yay ending, which is the canon one, the meh, you tried, didn't get all the ship parts ending, and the holy shit, he's dead ending. And I like them. It really makes you want to earn that good ending, to try and find the way to optimize things in the best way you can. Honestly, getting blues is the real key to that. On my first playthrough, I didn't find the blue onion until like day 8, and it fucked me up so badly I failed and had to restart. Once I got where everything was, it was very easy to get all of them with plenty of time to spare. I always tend to finish with at least 10 days to spare, and that's not me bragging, I'm just saying how much strategy plays into this first game. But enough about that, let's talk about our only main character some more. Something about Olimar that I don't quite get is this characterization that he's this brave, star-trotting astronaut that works for a freight company. No, dude's a truck driver, like, straight up. He's smart and well-spoken and very introspective, like I said at the top of this, but at the end of the day, he seems like he's just trying to pay his bills while getting a degree in biology more than anything. He has a profound interest in wildlife and how they can coexist, and it's fascinating to hear him talk about it. The first game, more so than any other, shows what is at the core of Olimar as a character, and that's his compassion and drive for his family. He's trying to survive for them and see them again. He has self-preservation, but his extrinsic motivation is to hold his family again and be around for his children to grow up. You can see this when he describes them at the end of the day or talk about the kids' respective gifts to him. It's genuinely good character work. My other pet theory on this is that, at least in the first game, the Dolphin was Olimar's ship, and the company had him lease it to them for insurance purposes, leading to the opening of the second game. But to me, that's his ship, that's his car. He loves that thing to death, which is funny given how often he crashes in this series. Also, I do have to say, look at this little guy. Look at him. He's just a little guy trying to get home, and he's so cute. I love how he runs with his arms sticking out like he's in a puffer jacket. It's fucking adorable. He's a big, serious family man, but he can still be cute, damn it. I love his 3 baby hairs and his big nose and his weird head. I love it. Ugh, such a good design. His voice is also great. He has this deep, almost deathly pitched down voice that makes him sound more influential than I think he would have otherwise. You'd think a creature this small would have a high-pitched voice, but nope. He's a deep baritone of a man, and it works on him to really add to his charm. Pikmin 1 is a great time, and it's one to keep mastering as time goes by. And hey, I can think of worse characters to spend a month with. Fair warning, Pikmin 2 is my least favorite game in the franchise, and is the first game in almost 5 years that has pissed me off to the degree that I had to take a break. While I will be saying positive things about this game, just know that I will be tearing into this thing the further we go. So if you want to skip to the next section when I start getting angry, or just move on to Pikmin 3 stuff, I don't blame you. Alright, let's begin. Pikmin 1 was good, but it didn't wow people when it first released, and Miyamoto is nothing if not persistent with his ideals, no matter how bad they may be. So for the creation of Pikmin 2, they decided to get rid of the clock and instead have item collecting be the main drive, but instead of ship parts, we have My Hopes and Dreams to collect. People found the rather short playtime and lack of replay value, outside of just doing it faster, unappealing, which something like Luigi's Mansion was able to excel with its money score system, facilitating a better application of the skills you've learned and put into practice as the game went. Pikmin 1 only really had the ability to not lose Pikmin and get the parts quicker, so to combat this, they removed the day limit and set a new goal.
Capitalism!
Our story begins right after the first game's good ending. Olimar departs from his ship to see that the company owner is in a state of disrepair, given that this gangly fucker standing between us is responsible for the company going belly up. Dicknut here lost his entire shipment of Pick carrots, to space bunnies of all things, and the president used the company as collateral. Along with the ship I just spent the better part of a month fixing up, but fuck me, I guess. Why Olimar didn't just ask for his piggy bank back or offer that help to pay the debt, I don't know, but whatever. Olimar is in such a state of shock he drops the souvenir he brought back for his son, allowing it to roll and be detected by the company's ship. I'm just gonna refer to this thing as Sheila because it seems fitting. Sheila values the bottle cap at 100 Pokos, so the president sends me back to the planet, while also having to drag along Curly here. I'm being rather mean to our albino friend here because, frankly, he's an asshole. And all of this is his fault for not paying attention, and oh look, he fell off the ship. Fucking great. The tall blonde guy is named Louis. He's slow, he's dim, he's not very interesting, only cares about food, and is the bane of my existence in this franchise. Seriously, I have not so thoroughly hated a light-haired jackass this much since Bede from Pokemon Sword and Shield. Here are the positive qualities about Louis. He has a whistle that sounds like a train.
I'm a train!
And can bring me back Pikmin that are sitting idle at Sheila while my squad are doing something useful. Granted, this crash was Olimar's fault, because for some reason a man who drives a truck for a living can't make a successful landing. Like ever. This does give the game a way more natural tutorial. Day 1 is just that, teaching us how to switch captains and that even brand deals can't survive the apocalypse. Day 2 has us learn more about combat and how caves work. Yeah, caves are rather hit or miss in this game, but we'll get there. This first one is rather cute though. It's only 2 levels deep and is mainly here so you can understand what caves are and that purple Pikmin exist, or as the fanbase calls them, the only ones that matter. Oh, you have other types, but purples are just the best in almost every situation. But as we go, you'll see why I'm hesitant to use them. These chunky bastards have the strength of 10 Pikmin, and can stun enemies if you miss, giving you more time to readjust. In this cave, they're helpful for getting this game's form of progression gating, the top half of a globe. Unlike in the first game, how you unlock the other 3 areas is by meeting a singular objective, be it a single item or paying off the debt. In some regards, it makes this game less linear to get through given that you can tackle any area you want whenever you want, depending on how far into the debt you are, so that's fun. In others, it can feel like you have no direction after a certain point, in which case you just do everything you can, which can be fun, but it often feels pointless. We get our Sumo Purples who take the globe piece of the ship, who analyzes it, thus letting us leave this place since we can't progress until we get my baby Blues. Something else to note that is rather annoying about this game and Pikmin 4 is that Sheila will not shut the fuck up. Every new discovery she has something to say, every treasure she has to sit there and let you fucking observe it and describe it and talk about it and tell you its value. And the first 5 times, it was cool. But by the time I reached the second cave of the game, I was annoyed by it. Pikmin 3 had a similar problem with the logs you'd find around the game, but at least there you could turn them off in the menu. I have no idea why you are forced to sit there and have this thing talk at you every 5 seconds like it's your nosy coworker who wants to feel included. Like, just let me explore. You already have the end of cave log and the end of day log on top of the treasure tracker and Piclopedia. Why the fuck is this thing so chatty? Just let me explore, and if I have a question about something or want to see it in engine or find its value, I have a menu for that. What is the point of this thing never shutting up? And that's something I don't see talked about with Pikmin 2. People have a bug up their ass about modern games over tutorializing you, but this was also something during the GameCube's lifespan. But rather than it just being tutorials that need to simmer the fuck down. It's random dialogue that stops the game like it's a diamonded pearl for some reason. And I wouldn't have a problem with this normally if the game was not so dependent on you being aware of your surroundings and not being in the middle of a firefight. There were numerous times I was under attack and the ship stopped me to be like, ooh, it's shiny.
I know! You know, I got it. I got the concept.
Like, I get it, let's move on now. Anyway, we leave the Valley of Repose to head to the Awakening Woods, and wow, that's pretty. Something I will give this game credit for is the Four Seasons motif it's got going on. You start in winter, the place where life slumbers, then move on to spring where life awakens, then summer where things flourish and thrive, and then fall where everything dies. It is a little strange to me that they just changed the spawn locations on Pikmin 1's maps, but at the same time, I kinda get it. You wanted a different experience from the original, and what better way to compare and contrast than by making them mirror images of each other? We plot this in other media, or even games, so why is this a bad thing? Especially when the seasonal aspect adds a lot to making them feel different. If it was just the same areas with no changes, I'd get the anger, but because they went that extra step, I like it. It also speaks to Olimar's character in a way that he would just go back to somewhere familiar, even in a hostile land. It's like when you go camping and you have a specific plot you like to occupy. It's still technically unfamiliar ground, but it's more familiar than the area surrounding it. One thing I kinda found insulting was people saying that the big joke of Pikmin 1 is that Olimar doesn't know what he's talking about. So in this game, it makes sense that the plot is more about money, and that's it. When it kinda misses the point of Olimar as a character. He's just some average guy in a different sense to you or I, but he was still a really smart and thought out person. And Sheila kinda takes that away from him by virtue of the fact that she won't shut up and has kinda a noxious personality half the time about it, and is also programmed to be hyper-capitalist. I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but I don't really know what to talk about in Pikmin 2 in terms of a narrative. It's so non-linear, I can't really give it a beat for beat like I did the first game. So while I will go over more things than I already have, I won't cover every cave or every treasure because there's too many to do in a video like this. Following our landing though, we find red and purple seeds. These are the essence of something that gives the Pikmin a kick in the ass, and something that apparently was at some point Medusa's shampoo. The ultra spicy and bitter sprays are tools that help you in combat. The spicy makes Pikmin faster, and the bitter turns enemies to stone, but they take longer to kill. I actually didn't know what this thing did till the second to last cave of the game, but hey, it's useful if you need to be sneaky when the countdown's hidden. The next cave we enter is the Hole of Beasts, and the only noteworthy quality here is that we get the treasure tracker, and much like everything else in this game, it's obnoxiously annoying. The sound is so high-pitched and frequent, it sounds like someone's trying to play a theremin, but then stopped and started again and again. After that, we enter the White Flower Garden, and this cave's only real point of interest is that it gives us white Pikmin. These bug-eyed little bastards are able to see hidden treasure and start digging so that your other Pikmin can start helping, as well as being immune to poison. While purple Pikmin are somewhat of a powerhouse tank with the only things holding them back are their speed and scarcity, white Pikmin have the opposite problem of being glass cannons. They don't hit very hard, but they are extremely useful, as later caves tend to treat poison like a garnish half the time, and if they get eaten, most enemies either die or just take a lot of damage. It speaks to the duality of the two types added in this game. One is offensive and extremely useful in combat, and one is more passive while still being an asset to traversal and hazard removal, with both still being essential for gathering treasures. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's one of the things the series is remarkably consistent on. For every advantage a type has, another has a similar advantage that doesn't make any one type objectively the best, and even if that type can be viewed as the best, there's usually a hindrance to them that puts them down to the level of their more base siblings, and I'll cover that more when we get to later games. After acquiring the whites, we clear the cave and gain the ability to take a nap and head out. We spend the next day getting rid of some poison and getting the other half of the globe so that we can get the other two Pikmin types we don't have. I'm gonna tangent to talk about enemies for a second. While the first game had quite a few interesting enemies and even some that were just irritating, Pikmin 2's enemies range from, oh okay, you're kinda funny with this plant thing, to, hey, you're cool if I'm not trying to break down a wall like this thing with a long needle nose, and some that are so bad that I can't fathom who thought it was a good idea to put them in the game. Like this thing, which is a beetle with a bunch of balloons who vomits up bomb rocks and throws them at you. Or a variant of the snitch bug that targets your captains, meaning that your Pikmin are sitting ducks. Or, I don't know, blowhogs that will chuck your Pikmin off ledges, instantly killing them. Like, what the hell, man. And I get the idea of planning ahead and micromanaging and all that, but I would think that you don't want to put enemies that buck your Pikmin off by default as a reoccurring enemy in the dungeon layout that has no walls. You know, that's just a thought. I'm saving one enemy in particular for later, but in general, the enemies are fine. But the ones that spawn in caves, you know, these cramped, narrow places with either high walls or only guardrails so the captains don't fall off, are ridiculous for what you have to put up with. Much like Cuphead or Soulsborne games, it's doable, by no means is it not doable, but the amount of tiptoeing I have to do in these caves near the end borders on absurd. The dev team heard people say that Pikmin 1 was too easy, so they took that and went, oh, okay, you want it hard then? So slam the button on whatever that meant at the time. We'll get into it later, but the caves in Pikmin 2 are the worst thing about its design. Moving on, we get the globe piece, clear more thrashing walls guarded by poison, and get whatever miscellaneous treasures until the day's end. Leaving the woods, we now have access to the perplexing pool. All I do that day is try to get to the yellow onion and bolster my numbers, because unlocking yellows means we can go back to the woods and unlock blues. So, much like in the first game, reds are immune to fire and blues are immune to water, but yellows got an equivalent exchange almost. See, they lost their ability to carry bomb rocks, but gained their immunity to electricity. I can only assume this was done so that you can't just throw bomb rocks back at the enemies that drop them, or find one in the level and hold onto it for a boss fight. More realistically, it's because each subfloor of a cave is too small to feasibly carry them around and not kill your whole squad, and they probably couldn't allocate the data to remember if you had one or not, so just swapped out bomb rocks for electricity. Which makes sense, given electricity is equivalent to a disintegration ray in this game for some fucking reason. Every other hazard in every other game, including electricity, just stuns Pikmin. But here it's equivalent to the wrath of God. I've heard people say that Pikmin 2 doesn't care about your feelings, and that that's a positive thing. But no, it's not. I understand this is a real-time strategy game, but that requires me to be able to make a strategy. Every other game has that element, but Pikmin 2 is more based on the player's reaction to unforeseen circumstances and dealing with it in the moment. However, that comes with a problem. Most endgame caves require every Pikmin type to get through them, except one. You have 5 Pikmin types, meaning 20 per type. If you don't want to use purples, that gives you 25 per type, but without your heaviest hitter. Purples are a commodity until you get to the final area, but even discounting that, it's not all that fun and engaging to just go in with a full squad so that I can just have everything in case I need it. I think caves are inherently interesting and effectively let you have double the game for the same experience, but a lot of them don't seem to be tested, and I think that's the problem. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Once we've gotten our starter trio back, Scorbunny, Poplio, and Eevee, you know, the best starters, we embark on clearing out the woods of its many problems. Something I find kinda cute is that every item in the GameCube version of this game was some kind of brand deal, but for the Switch port, I'm not too sure about the Wii version, they had to remove the product and make up their own or use an already existing fake company, which I think is more charming in a way. It makes the world feel more real than by pulling me out of it by saying, hey, I know that brand. The exception though is anything to do with Mario for some reason. I know that Miyamoto is like one of the big heads of Nintendo and that he's the director of this and Mario, but why not make up fake stuff in its place? I mean, yeah, it's cute to see a Mario crayon and Mario paint in a Bowser Matchbox, but even just changing a letter to like Mario or Bowser with a Z would be cute. After all that clearing out, we end day 8 with over 6,100 Pokos. Yeah, that's something else. This game isn't very hard to beat, but I echo what Cat Icarus said about Crash 4. Easy to beat, hell to 100% complete. There is an argument to be made in trying to beat Pikmin 2 with the minimum number of caves, or even if you could do it with just the overall treasures, despite the minimum number of caves you'd have to do to bolster your whites and purples, but hey, that's a stream for another day if y'all want that. Days 9 and 10, I didn't record, because it was just me getting more purple Pikmin from that one cave in the woods. So day 11 has us go back to the valley and spend the next few days clearing it out. Honestly, there's not really much to say about the above ground here. The enemies can lick a clit, but the area is small and pretty with a few interestingly hidden treasures, but otherwise it's not all that special. The subterranean complex, though, is one of my least favorite caves in the game. It starts out fine, but the further you go into it, the worse it gets. Bomb beetles and small cluster parts of the map with little to no room to move, a whole sublevel you have to basically travel through twice because of how many bombs there are, bombs on the ground, bombs that drop out of the sky, bombs on spiders, bombs that only spawn if you have Pikmin, bombs that only appear if your Pikmin are carrying something. All of this is fucking absurd. Who made this game? What the hell were they thinking? As if that's not bad enough, there's another dungeon later that uses this exact same concept, but now there are also cannon beetles constantly firing non-stop because fuck you. And then there's a boss. This thing isn't too terribly hard if you know the trick of hiding behind the terrain, but on a first go, you probably won't get that. So you just run and this thing mows your Pikmin down. And after that, you just have to keep limping along. Oh, and on top of that, another dungeon has this exact same thing as well, but this time it's standing in water. So I guess it's entirely different now, even though it moves away anyway, so the only difference is how you start the fight. This is what I mean when I call this game lazy. I haven't as of yet, but when you just do the same concept again and again, but add one thing and call it a new challenge, I call that lazy. I seriously do not get the fanbase for this game. I'm running out of ways to make the caves sound interesting, so I'm just going to talk generally about them for a moment. There are 6 ways a cave can look, spread out between the 14 caves in the game. These being concrete, soil, although those two look rather similar, garden, metal, toy box, and tile. Of these 6 types, I can get on board with all of them except metal, because metal is just floating in a void, and you get knocked off way too easily. Every other type is in some kind of closed room, and has enemies that can reasonably be dealt with. Each cave is going to vary on its difficulty depending on how the game felt that day. Every cave, except for one, is designed to be procedurally generated so that it's always fresh when you load a save file. Even if you save scum like I did, it's different from moment to moment. This isn't a huge deal, except when the game likes to fuck you over by spawning a frog in the middle of your group. Like, I just spawned in, I can't even react to this stuff. Who let the enemies onto the platform I spawn in on? That just seems mean. After a while, caves stop feeling like a fun thing to try and explore, and more of an obligation because I need to finish this thing. I'm not joking when I say this game broke me near the end. It got so bad, I was genuinely miserable from how much this game was beating my face into the dirt. Keeping Pikmin alive for a boss fight is incredibly hard, and going back up to get more is a wash because you have to trek all the way back down, keeping them safe with everything respawned in, and it's just mind-numbing and debilitating after a while. Like, this is a video game, and having to act like the cat from 101 Dalmatians protecting the puppies is not a fun feeling. I don't want to feel like I need to treat them like if they die before I absolutely need them, I need to restart, because the game decided an enemy could hit me through a wall or no-scope me across the map. I get what the appeal is of the caves, I really do, but if I wasn't doing this video, I would not have gotten all the treasures. I would have just beelined it for the caves I enjoyed and suffered through the dream den and called it a day. There is one cave I can say I like more than I thought I would, and you all know what it is, the submerged castle. This is the only cave in the game that was built to be the same because of its gimmick, the water wraith. This sentient rolling pin shows up if you spend more than 5 minutes on a floor at any given time, which is why you'll notice I don't have much footage of it besides it spawning, since I was incredibly fast this go around because I knew where everything was. That's the beauty of this cave. Its layout is so consistent that you don't need to worry about the generation because it's set. It's fixed. And if you like the RNG nature of the other caves, that's perfectly fine. But it's no wonder everyone and their dog loves this cave for one reason or another. Other caves have consistent set pieces and even entire floors that don't change at all, but those are the exception rather than the norm of enemies and floor layouts changing depending on whatever RNG counter it's meant to find stuff in. The submerged castle is not a masterpiece, but it's at least enjoyable to go through and figure out the routing method, and it encourages you to come back if you need to because it's stagnant. You can just blitz through if you need to and get more blues to make it easier for the boss fight, and I think that's an incredible idea. It's why I like forest caves so much, because they don't mock me for trying to learn them. With that, I think it's time we go back to the story of it all. So after completing the debt on day 16, Olimar heads off to tell the president the good news, and god damn it, Lou's not in the ship. Swear to god with this fucking guy. We tell the president, who's been guilt-tripping us in his letters by the way, and he has the bright idea to go get the fucker back and waste all the money I just accumulated making Sheila gold-plated. I mean, she looks fabulous, but seriously, what the fuck, man? Oh, right, the end of day logs. I mentioned in the first game you get them from Olimar's perspective based on what you've done that day, but in 2, you get them in chronological order. The only real difference is whether or not you paid off the debt. If you haven't, the president talks about living under a bridge and making friends with these weird bug creatures, your wife and kids kids send you weirdly nihilistic notes about money, and then after, you get your family spending the money recklessly, and Louis's grandmother talking about how he was a weird kid. This game goes out of its way to add to the cast and expand the world of Pikmin outside of just Olimar, and I can certainly appreciate that. But that comes at the cost of your main character feeling like he was an afterthought in his own sequel. Louis gets more of a personality in this game, and that's saying something because all he gets is the starving fool. The most Olimar gets is the Piclopedia, which admittedly is charming to see the stark contrast with how he describes the different ways a creature might have evolved or what they're like. Meanwhile, Louis is just like, goes well with butter. That's a funny bit, but it doesn't add anything the first game didn't accomplish. We know Olimar is well-spoken and cares deeply about the local animal population. Maybe do something with that? Hell, the president is faring better. At least he's got something charming about him. He's nowhere near as endearing as Olimar, but at least the guy put his money where his rat stash was, and came with us to find more treasure and Louis after splurging on Sheila's new grill. I even like his car horn of a whistle for what it's worth. So the president comes with me to find Louis and basically be cannon fodder for this one boss I still don't understand how to beat. Like, I get the base idea, distracted with one captain and attack with the other, but outside of making a deal with Odin, I have no idea how to do that when the thing keeps switching between us every 5 microseconds. The first thing we do though is get 100 purple Pikmin and then head off to the quote-unquote secret area of the game that only exists after losing Louis, the Wistful Woods. This area fucking sucks. Not because it's too hard, but because of 2 major things. This barbell and this fish on legs. The Gatling Groink is a walking battle tank with a face shield that shoots like it's a conservative that's been slightly inconvenienced. I bring it up because I came to this area, cleared out all the enemies immediately outside of my camp, and set about using all my purples to carry this barbell so I no longer had to worry about my purples, and this thing shows up like a slasher in a horror film, scaring me so hard I almost had a panic attack. I don't know how wide this thing's attention radius is, but all the way to my spawn point is way too fucking big if you ask me. I didn't go near it, I didn't see it, I didn't attack it, nothing. I was solely focused on this barbell and it just decided to rock up like it was no big deal. Hell, in one cave, this thing was so bad I had to punch it to death so I can get the treasure. The Groink is so bad of an enemy that no one likes it, to the point it's never appeared in the series again. It is such a bad concept all the way down. The barbell, by the way, takes 100 purple Pikmin to carry, so until you get the thing to your ship, you can't really afford to lose any the whole game. Oh sure, you'll lose 2 or 3 here and there, but on the whole, you don't really want that to happen. Hell, I spent like 4 in-game days after getting the president of just grinding purple so I don't have to care anymore. Purples in the early game are a commodity that you have to keep safe for this one thing, and they're so easy to lose because of their combat prowess. They're good, so you're incentivized to use them more, but if you use them more, you'll lose them more. This seems like a counterbalance when they're so broken usually, but the problem is, getting more of them is more a matter of willing yourself to waste trips there and back, and wasting the number of days it'll take to do so. Just for my own sake, here's a thought I had to mitigate the problems both whites and purples have in terms of their scarcity. In the caves, you can bring enemies to Sheila and she converts them into money. In the overworld, purples and whites just bring an enemy to the current lowest amount onion. So if you have 50 blues and 70 of the other 2 colors, it'll bring the corpse the blue onion. Why not let the ship allocate which of the 2 types you want the enemies to be turned into after you get back to the surface? Hear me out for a second, we don't have an onion for them, and the only way to get more of these 2 is by throwing the reds, blues, or yellows into the respective candy pop buds. But the ship can house these 2, so why not just add the function that allows it to mimic the onions and make purples and whites? Maybe make the weight limit part of it so that you can't just get infinite purples from dwarf bulborbs, just the adults. Basically anything 10 and up gets you purples, and anything below 10 gets you whites. It would make them easier to get, but wouldn't break the game, just make getting through it a little less of a hassle. And if you really want to go a step further, make it part of the upgrade after paying off the debt. That way you can't get a whole lot of them until after you see the credits, and there's an in-story explanation as to why she couldn't do this beforehand. Because after getting this one piece of treasure, purples stop being a commodity and start being cannon fodder. They're still useful, just not as needed, if that makes sense. After that whole ordeal, we make our way through the last 3 caves, and I need you to hear me when I say this, I spent the last day of this game on these 3 caves, and it was 6 hours of my life. Take it from me, if you're going to play this game, do not do these 3 in a row, or even back to back. I've been saying how much this game broke me down. Well, here, these caves were so long and so soul-crushing that I was begging the game to let me leave it. Just let me get through, just let me be done. The Dream Den especially is just this hodgepodge of random floors from past dungeons, and hell even has 3 Emperor Bulblats from the last game just chilling on one floor. He's not as hard because of that, but still, fuck you. No wonder this place is called the Dream Den. The further you go down, the more it's like a walking nightmare. And you know what awaits you at the bottom of this abyss of torture? A boss fight. A boss fight that is, and I mean this with no sense of irony, the best thing in the game. It's effectively a game of Simon Says, and if you do what I did, which was tackle the water spurt so you don't have to worry about the squad you left behind, and then the electric minefield, the rest is pretty much a cakewalk. The poison one gets more complicated because of its pattern, and the fire one just reaches longer, but if you have reds, you can just worry about Olimar and be fine. I may hate Louis, but I have to give the game props for making a boss fight that is, at the very least, fun to tackle. It just sucks that I had to go through the dungeon twice and waste a bitter spray so I can get to the entrance before the time ran out on the day, but whatever. You beat Louis, kill the monster he's riding on, and that's it. You carry Louis' unconscious body back to her, and it's revealed that he's only worth 10 Pokos. And you know what? I think that's about 5 times his worth. I hadn't mentioned it before, but in the Dream Den you keep seeing Louis and he just runs away from you, leading you to the final floor where the final boss happens. Louis sucks. I know I opened with this, but it bears repeating. He's the reason the game happens. He's the reason we have to come back. He makes us fight a monster so that we can take him home so he won't die. He only thinks about himself and has no regard for anyone else's life or their well-being. We'll get into this in the next few games, but he is a supremely selfish man-child who I'm baffled the fanbase likes at all. I liked him for about 5 minutes, and Red told me how much of a jackass he was, and I didn't believe him until I saw it for myself. He is such a nothing character, and I hope the fan base gets over their nostalgia for him, and the franchise moves past their need for him to be a pot stirrer. And with that, the game's done. All treasures collected, and our bastard of a coworker has been returned to us. All in all, that wasn't very good. The big problem with Pikmin 2 is its difficulty curve, especially that last cave, and no way to get more Pikmin outside of just starting over with all your progress undone, except for the treasures. People often say modern games are too easy and that games that they grew up with were much harder, but I'm of the mindset that a game should have a solid base that allows players to beat it with a difficulty curve that moves up as the game goes, not spike and dip at the whim of whatever RNG number got rolled that time. If Pikmin 2 had a difficulty select that allowed people to choose how many enemies spawn, I think that would have been really cool. Say what you will about Pikmin 3 Deluxe, but the difficulty setting in that game adds to the replay value. Pikmin 2 will always be the same game every time, because of what you have to do in it, regardless of the orders you do the caves in. Pikmin 1 has enough freedom to allow the player to make different choices and make new plans and get better. Pikmin 2 asks you to play and keeps punching me and getting angry that I'm upset at it. It also reminds you a lot of Lingering Will. People defend it because it's hard, but the hardness comes from brute force memorization and nostalgia, because once you know the patterns, it's not hard. It's just do it or die, and I'd rather try and see what happens. That Wollywog I mentioned earlier spawning in my group reminds me a lot of that stupid grab move Terra can do at the start of the fight, and just how unfair it is. Pikmin 2 isn't a bad game. It does a lot of things right, like the boss fights. Aside from like 2 of them, I think the bosses are at the very least good. I think it comes down to the fact that the bosses are the only things in the arena, so it's more about learning them and not dealing with 50 other fucking things at once. It's also just cathartic and tension relieving to finally be done with such an ordeal half the time, especially those last 3. The bread bug boss is annoying because of the way the bread bugs work. It is still cute though, I'll give it that. But for every element in its design or carriage beat or cute cave concept, there's something that makes me angry, anxious, or annoyed. And when it's over, I'm not thinking about what I want to do next time, I'm just glad it's over, and that I never want to touch it again for as long as I live. Never has a game filled me with such rage, contempt, and depression all at once, and never has a game made me long for the sweet hereafter more than this has. Thankfully, Pikmin 3 is the exact opposite of all that, because wow is this game charming. Big sprawling worlds, actual characters with personalities that aren't grating, and a plot that asks me to care how thorough I am and whether or not I want to see it through. The fanbase was immediately torn when this game came out, and honestly, I'm not sure why. Yes, it's extremely different from Pikmin 2, but as you'll see, and as you already have seen, I will find that a positive. Pikmin 3 starts with
Galactic date 20XX.
Are we actually gonna get voice acting in a first-party Nintendo game? Nah, it's just the opening and ending cutscenes. Weak. Our story begins with 3 astronauts on the planet Kopai, Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, who are in the search for fruit for the sake of saving their planet from mass starvation due to mass copulation. This intro is pretty nice too. The music, the animation, the way the narrator's kind of a dick about Kopai not planning ahead, it's cute. They're on their way to the planet, and of course something happens. Does no one have a sensor on these things? Or even the basic banal curiosity to check the ship's basic infrastructure? What is it about Panif's atmosphere that makes it so easy for things to go wrong for incoming spacecrafts? Ooh, that's a nice title screen. You know what, forget what I just said, that was worth it. The 3 are sent careening out of the ship, conveniently with their full spacesuits on, as if none of them were, I don't know, taking a nap or something, and now have to find each other. The game puts us in the shoes of, oh my god, tiny demon elves! Sorry, that startled me. We get control of Charlie, the captain of the crew and pilot of the SS Drake. He shows us one of the many leftover visual components of the Wii U version, and we're off to learn the basics of whistling and throwing your Pikmin. Oh my god, I love his little run when you whistle them, it's so cute! He looks like a Charlie Brown character. Oh my god, I didn't even mean to make that pun. This game's amazing already for that alone. We enter a cave and kill these weird-looking abomination fish bat things. I'm sure they're not important. And something I find cute about this game is that when you're in caves, there are oftentimes mushrooms that light up the path, but also act as guideposts telling you if you've been there or not. Nice bit of environmental feedback, and oh hey, that foreshadowing's paying off already, I see. Next up, we meet Alf, who is nearly drowned in a droplet, and sounds like a literal baby for some reason. He sees the Drake having an aneurysm, and we get an actual new mechanic added to the throwing thing, in that Pikmin can hang on to things and weigh them down. Well, ain't that neat? Something interesting to note is that the characters in this game sound oddly French. Not that that's a bad thing in or out of universe. They are from a different planet than Olimar, and it might just be an accent thing, but I find it cute. It adds flavor to these characters that the Hakatations don't have because they all have the same accent. We'll swing back to this topic in 4, but I wanted to bring it up here and say something nice about Alf. After that, we get yet another new mechanic. Oh, Pikmin 3, you spoil us. Here we learn about transportable fragments. The Pikmin will grab one piece at a time from a pile and transport it to where it's needed. The only real issue with this is that Pikmin will go back to the original pile spot even after everything is done, unless you whistle them. So that's annoying because you still have to babysit them, but that is mitigated by something later, so it evens out as a wash to me. Alf then finds his Wii U Kopad. Silly me. The Wii U doesn't exist anymore. The Switch took it into an alley and shot it in the back of the head behind a dumpster. This camera with an antenna on it is a map of sorts that lets us survey the area and even read nearby signals. We get another tutorial box, find a mysterious log, set up to find Brittany, and try to find out what happened to Charlie. Odd footnote here is that thrashing walls have gone from being made of brambles to dirt, which I think looks cuter and fits Pikmin's whole vibe a lot more. They even look like sandcastles! The next day, I land in the Garden of Hope to find my crewmates. I gather more troops and forget how the lock-on works for a second, but boy howdy do I love this thing. The lock-on takes all the guesswork out of throwing and makes the more frantic nature of combat seem more manageable than just spraying and praying like before. Some people would find this a detriment, but I'm a slippery bitch at the best of times, so asking me to stand still in a tense situation so I can spam a button isn't gonna happen. The lock-on also helps with puzzles since sometimes you can't make a throw unless you use the feature, and it's designed that way. It doesn't trivialize things, it just makes them easier, which to some people is the greatest sin gaming ever committed. I will say, with all the options modern games have, they could have easily let you toggle it off in a menu, but still, I think it works fine as is. Anyway, I make my way to the signal that drew me here and find the pink one of the group, Brittany. You can tell she's the girl of the group because her suit has a skirt. Fuck, that is stupid. What is this, the 1950s? Brittany, ever the pragmatist in the group and perpetually hungry, reminds Alf why we're even on this godforsaken rock by pointing out a delicious strawberry. So I grab it, and my ADHD ass sees a data file and is like, ooh, shiny. Then Alf finds this hole which has this weird probe-shaped thing in it with beads. In Alf's hole? How unusual. Anyway, I kill the probe, releasing the alpha beads, which turns out to be rock Pikmin. Rockies are essentially gray purples, but with the balancing act of not being able to stick them onto enemies because of their stubby arms, at the cost of doing 40 damage when thrown at something. They also act like yellows and whites, being able to deal with specific walls that block your path, in this case being glass walls, and on top of that, they can't be crushed, so they're harder to kill unless they're straight up eaten. I think they were a nice addition to the cast, and didn't outclass any type the way purples did in 2, allowing them to be the master of initial damage and progression, but not a jack of all trades. They have their use and are a good addition to the roster, but aside from that, they are just a color in the rainbow that is Pikmin types. And I'm liking that we're getting more literal with the elemental theming. Makes me wish the base 3 would take up that trait. We break the 2 walls between me and Brittany, and now we have a Goyle. It's also funny how they made Alf and Brittany the binary colors of gender for this thing, when I think swapping that could have been fun. Hell, Smash did that with Alf, giving him both Brittany and Charlie's color palettes as alternate skins, as well with Olimar, which is a neat touch, but why not swap it? Brittany with blue hair would have been so cool, although I would have actually just made them playable like with the Koopalings or even Hero from the DLC, with like 1 or 2 recolors for Olimar and be done with it, but I digress. Anyway, the strawberry makes it back to the ship, and we get this viscerally satisfying juicing animation after being given the option to analyze the fruit, getting us one step closer to saving Koppai and buying us 1 day longer here on Penef. It even combines different types of fruit if it runs out of room. That's so cool! You get all these tasty colors out of it later on too, and it's just really pretty. Honestly, a juicing party where we all make different concoctions of juice to try sounds delightful. Once we have Brittany, we're shown that we're able to throw captains to higher places and get fruit or fragment pieces. On top of that, we're given the charge ability, and god damn it do I love this thing. It's a replacement for the swarm ability in 1 and 2, and while it's not subtle, it's sure as hell a lot quicker, and is particularly useful with rock Pikmin for their contact damage, and making it so that you don't have to throw Pikmin for them to engage with an object. You can just charge them at the thing, and the designated number of what type you have selected at the moment will go in guns a-blazing, and it's so fun to use. It's even usable in digging holes. Oh yeah, that's something this game adds too. In past games, you get bomb rocks from either just finding them at their spawn location every day, or by the developers deciding they hate you via their pet spiders. But in 3, there are these little dirt mounds that hold either bomb rocks, which any type can carry now, which is super fucking useful, or fragment pieces. And the kicker to these things is that you can have all 100 Pikmin in a dirt mound so that it can go quicker, or you just let a few deal with it at a time for better multitasking. It's a nice little treasure trove and a nod to the caves from Pikmin 2 for those who like that. While we're not on anything specific narrative-wise, let's talk about juice. While the fruit is fun to collect and they have 64 pieces to get in total, the ultimate goal of the fruit is to keep us alive and Koppai from mass extinction. Most fruits give you 1 jar of juice and keep you 1 more day from starvation yourself. It effectively makes you choose how much or how little pressure you want in the narrative. I haven't gotten into the plot yet, but that's because it hasn't cropped up yet. I'll be honest, I'm just going as I feel with this one, but I'll swing back to the real narrative when it matters. My point is that you choose how vital it is at any given time to get fruit. A lot of people bitch that there's no urgency after like day 4 if you've gotten the fruits you come across, because by the end of the game, you'll have over 80 days worth of rations left if you get all the fruits. But that ignores the fact of why we're even here to begin with, saving our home. 3 people of different body types go through a jar a night of this juice, and Koppai is already on a food shortage as it is. That right there is indicative of how much we really need to get. Yeah, planet-wide destruction and mass starvation is a little out there for people to grasp in the same emotional weight as get off this planet or I'll die, or kick the living shit out of this literal walking nightmare to wake my boyfriend up, or even do all these side quests so I can seduce a scumbag and save my childhood waifu from sex trafficking, but it's still a clear motivation. It still holds weight, and if you don't get all the fruit, you don't get the good ending, so is it really worth it to not go for them? Pikmin 1 has a constant pressure on you because of its set time limit. This game puts that pressure in your hands. Do you want to have constant anxiety, or would you rather have time to explore and gather a safety net so you can finish the mission? And I find that to be an asset as opposed to a detriment to like other players. It reminds me a lot of Kingdom Hearts 3, where if you level up all your form changes and stay at the proper level on anything but crits, it feels easy. But the game's final area is level 42. You're not supposed to be at 100 for the finale. That's why it feels too easy. Here, the adventure feels breezy because you aren't alone, and you aren't being crushed under the weight of the developers getting mad people found their last game to be too easy. No, this game is breezy because you're on an adventure to save your home with 2 friends, and that sense of togetherness is what holds 3 together. It's what the first hour is about, basically, getting the band back together. Oh, hey, speaking of which, the next day we build this bridge and go off to find a signal we think is Charlie, and nope, it's a boss fight. A rather good one, too.
We've played the charade long enough. Give us the fruit and no one will get hurt.
Watch out!
Pay no mind to her, Fred, she's bluffing.
The armored Maw Dad really makes you think about how to tackle it given the skills you've been taught so far. Rocks can break, reds can smash. So it becomes a challenge of trying to aim and switching on the fly. Nothing new for the series, aside from putting what you know about the 2 types you have to use, but still, it's really fun. Every Pikmin type gets a boss based around their gimmick, and I like that approach a lot. I like when a boss feels like a puzzle in a game like this. Each one has a way to make the fight easier, you just have to find it, and I think that's smart. For example, the Maw Dad has these pincers that trap Pikmin so that it can eat them, but if you break one or both of the pincers, that stops being a problem and you can just evade an attack from that point on. We beat the Maw Dad and it spits out a cell phone from the 90s, which was what was giving off that signal that drew us here in the first place. Well, that sucks, but hey, Al thinks he can use it to boost our radar, so we take it back to the Drake so that he can tinker with it. That leads us to expand our range and look for Charlie elsewhere. Day 4 has us going to the distant tundra to find good old Captain, and yay, I love snow levels. Yeah, they're samey, but so are every other environmental templates. It's still pretty. Oh yeah, that's something else to bring up. Pikmin 3 is fucking gorgeous. Like, wow, no wonder this game took a decade to make. I'm surprised the Wii U didn't burst into flames from the water alone. Ironically. And of course, when we land here, Alf can't drive for shit, and we crash again. I swear you could make a drinking game out of the number of crashes this series has. Meaning we have to do the same basic puzzles we just did for no other reason that I could find besides padding and guaranteeing the player has yellows for the upcoming fight. Pikmin 3 is rather linear up until you get Charlie, where it then begins to open up more. There are story beats after, but none that railroad you like this one does. Technically, you can do everything you're capable of until you feel like progressing, but when the game thinks you'll have 5 tools at a certain point and you only have 2, it's less fun. So I tend to just book it till the point I have all the types and then do the cleanup. We get yellows, learn how electric currents work and how to push stuff down a hill, meet halfway, and then do what we came here to do and look for Charlie. I miss my green guy. He's probably dead judging by the cutscene looking like something ate him, but still, I have hope in this big dumb boxy head of mine. We stumble onto a familiar area and encounter those fish bats again, along with those mushrooms. Hang on, Charlie, I'm a-comin'! We rush into a cave's clearing because I have abandoned all sense of sanity, and are met with this fucking thing. The Viamoth Fastbat is the parent of those weird fish bat things from a second ago, and its gimmick is that if it's dark, it's invulnerable, but if you use yellows to connect a current, then it's able to be seen and hurt. What you're supposed to do is go around the room gathering fragments to build a bridge to reach the car battery that takes 20 Pikmin to activate. But if you stand idle too long or don't damage it fast enough, the Viamoth, they so wanted to call that thing Venomoth, it's so fucking similar. But if you whistle them, most should be fine. What I did was just gather a pile of fragments and then threw a bunch of yellows, and then Brittany then started the battery to skip the fight and kill this thing dead, because I was running low on time that day. We beat it and out pops a fruit and yay, Charlie's alive! Although I'm still curious as to how after 3 days in the bowels of a creature, but whatever.
Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born! Using their ultra superpowers, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup have dedicated their lives to fighting crime and the forces of evil!
We end the day, know the gang's all here, and set out in search of someone named Olimar, who apparently stole our Cosmic Key Drive, which is our ticket home, and seems surprisingly out of character for Olimar. I guess he's just missing his wife and kids a lot this time around, so I'm not gonna pass judgment until we know for sure what's going on. And hey, speaking of Olimar, we have this side mission that unlocks after we get Charlie. Let's touch on that briefly. This set of 4 missions, and another we'll swing back to later, are about Olimar and oh god fuck me, damn it, son of a bitch. I'm calling it now, Louis stole the key and this whole thing is a massive misunderstanding. Anyway, Captain Oatmeal and Lukewarm Milk over here are sent to this planet for the same reason we are. Food. But of course it's not for eating, it's for money! Because why else would the president send us here besides to pay off a debt? These act as lore-filled challenge modes for the game that are exclusive to Deluxe, hence why they're locked behind story progression. The other challenge modes were DLC that you could buy that was just added into Deluxe for free to justify the $6 price tag. I like Olimar's mission. It's cute, it's sweet, it fills in the story gaps for why he and Louis are even here, because the base game doesn't really explain all that, just kinda brushes past it. Overall, fun puzzles with a decent time limit that makes it fun to see how to platinum them. Remember this for later. It is nice to see Olimar doing something in this game and being able to hear him and play as him again. I also like that even though it explains why he was here, it doesn't spoil where he ended up by the ending of the game. If anything, stopping to play it now allows us to get more intrigued about where the plot is going because we just heard about him for the first time and now we know something happened to him and presumably he's acting strange. Again, put a pin in that for Pikmin 4. Day 6 sees us setting out to find Olimar,
Ask him my questions and get some answers.
and getting our Cosmic Key Drive back. I'm going to be skipping the next few days, as nothing really of note happens except for me getting more fruit pieces and killing bosses to get new phone models to upgrade our radar to, again, find Olimar. I do want to point out an annoying bugbear I have with this game though, in that it always defaults you to Alf as the playable character, even if you ended the day as Charlie or Brittany. And I don't know why, aside from alphabetical reasons, seeing as Charlie is my favorite character. So I want to play as him, but doing that requires me to either throw or dismiss the other two, then swap to him and whistle everyone back, when you could easily have just let the player pick their default captain. It doesn't even make sense why Alf is the default choice anyway. He's an engineer, Brittany is a botanist, and Charlie is the captain. He should be in the front more than him by a wide margin. I will say their names being codenames for the military terms like Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie is a neat detail, but it still could have been made to make more narrative sense. Anyway, bounding around again, the puzzles in this game are a lot more in-depth than the last two. Mostly they just had weight puzzles that at most made you use both captains once each, but in this game it's much more about using the three in tandem to solve a tricky problem, and it lends more into the sense of being actually challenging than just slamming your face into the enemy spawn button at Mach 10. The sand-belching Slug, god that name is terrible, what is with you guys, was admittedly an interesting combination of the Burying Snagrit and the Emperor Bulblat, in that it eats your Pikmin by burrowing into the ground, but its weakness is bomb rocks, which of course I spam like a little bitch that I am. The only other enemy of note in this area is the hairy beady Longlegs, as it's this game's default version of it, and it adds in the wrinkle that you have to remove its armpit hair before it becomes vulnerable. All it really does is drag out the fight, but it's an interesting way to do it. I like it when an enemy has a shield I have to break before I can deal damage. It seems much more rewarding than simply adding more health to the pyre. After a while, we reach the Twilight Woods where we believe Olimar to be, in where we find the pink-winged Pikmin. These things, much like rocks before them, are analogous to their two counterparts, the whites, in that they are weaker, but they make up for it in travel speed. In 2, whites can see hidden treasure and dig fast. In 3, yellows have been given the digging speed increase to make them more viable than just can throw higher and not get shocked, with the trade-off that any type can now hold and throw bomb rocks. Pinks, on the other hand, can ignore hazards on the ground and fly over water. They are also the only type that can pick up these weird Dr. Seuss-looking plants that give them a secondary use outside a treasure traversal. I think the eyes looking like goggles an Air Force pilot would wear, and their design in general, is just wholesome. Something to note is that this game changes how the onions work, in that every type is now found with their onion for ease of multiplication. However, now each one combines into one big one, and each new one being added at the end of the night, giving the thing this nice watercolor blending effect. It's really cool. It alleviates the problem 2 had of 2 of the main types not being easily accessible and replicable, while also not making the onion space too crowded. It's simply, hey, I need Pikmin, let's go get them. Oh, also, they added in the feature to bulk select every Pikmin type at once, meaning grabbing all 100 is way easier than in past games. I wish I'd have known this earlier in my playthrough, but still, there it is. Following that discovery, we built this bridge and took on the Wing Pikmin's boss, the Scornet Maestro, who has Louis for some fucking reason. The pattern is simple, but not too hard, and it feels more like a dance than anything. Like, you have to play by its rules rather than simply wailing on it like other bosses, which is appropriate given the theme of this boss being musical. I especially appreciate how it strums its harp. I do like how its minions will take other types of Pikmin and the wing ones have to get them back. It's a nice mechanic that makes them seem more useful than most Piktubers would make you believe they are. Like I said earlier, every type gets their moment to shine in this game, and to me, that says care and effort. Anyway, we kill it and take the embodiment of Suck back to the Drake, but time ran out before we can get him there, so he just slept in the rain all night. God, I hope he catches hypothermia. The next day, we get him in the ship and spend the rest of the day clearing out what we can of the woods. Later that night, he's not talking due to his spacesuit's trauma response system that knocks you out if you're too startled. So there's nothing left to do except wait till he— wait a second, why are we landing in the garden? What's he doing? Oh, okay, he just blew up that wall. But what the— he took all the juice? Well, that's not too bad. We only had 35 days worth, and with a new area open, we can get— he took Charlie's ducky? He must die. I can handle a lot of bad things for a character. I hate Louis enough as it is, and I can even understand him stealing the food seeing as he thinks we're hostile. But I draw the line at taking someone's comfort object. Fuck Louis. Fuck his stupid hair, fuck his annoying voice. I hate him. His single obsession with food isn't even funny. It's just a bad bit that stopped being funny the moment it appeared. I do not get the fandom's love for this pissant. He's so reprehensible and so selfish that I'm baffled as to why people think he's a likable character. He's the closest thing the series has to an antagonist, when in reality someone who is an actual space pirate that steals the treasures Olimar collects would be a much more interesting and funny idea, especially with the witty dialogue this series is capable of. Hell, make the ship they ride in a ship in a bottle, that'd be funny, and even fit the theme of everyone using spacesuits. Just stop using this generic as fuck asshole as a last second plot button when you're running out of ideas. Now that that's out of my system, we go after him to get our food back and give him a swift ass-kicking when we discover the blue onion and grind up those little guys while also getting fruits so that we don't die preparing for the next boss. Before we get there though, I want to point out the idea of certain enemies having weak spots, like this lobster with its eyes. It makes the lock-on feel better to use since the target is so small. It's an interesting mechanic, but so few enemies have it, it feels like it was an add-on more than anything. Anyway, the Claggled Meyerklops. Y'all really gotta have a talk about these names, Nintendo. What the hell? The main gimmick is that it's always raining until you beat it, and it's in a muddy area that gets more watery as it walks around. It also has this crystal covering its weak spot, so you need rocks and preferably blues to survive the water. So I did just that. 20 rocks and 80 blues later, we have ourselves a dead plant monster and a shitty blonde white guy. I do appreciate the devs realizing that players might be soft-locked, so made this area inaccessible until now, so you always have a way to get more rations. This game's really well made, guys. Louis tells us he's not Olimar and that he doesn't have the Cosmic Drive key. Called it! And that the real Olimar was last seen at this tree stump, which ties neatly into the side mission from earlier. So we know something's up, but not exactly what yet. We also learn why he stole from us was so that he could try and fix Sheila. Because of course we can't just have a ship land in this franchise, now can we? The next 5 days aren't anything special. I just gather up the remaining fruit in the game and secure the good ending, followed by us heading off to the Formidable Oak where we find Olimar covered in goo.
Good night, everybody.
We need him to wake up, so we try to take him back to the ship, but this massive blob known as the Plasm Wraith is so infatuated with Olimar, it won't let him leave. So we have to run through this gauntlet of puzzles and hazards to get him out of here safely. The Formidable Oak is the best area of the game for how it's designed. It really puts your ability to recognize patterns and puzzle solve to the test. The gimmick here is that Brittany is leading a team of winged Pikmin carrying Olimar through the cave. The boys, meanwhile, have to clear a path so that the Wraith can get to Olimar, and it's just so good, man. Seriously, this challenge is 100% worth playing the game for. It usually takes me 2 days to get through and a third to fight the boss. Speaking of which, this boss fight is a lot like the final boss in Pikmin 1, where you had to use each type to get there, but then once you did, it was mostly yellows and reds. Here, rocks are impervious to the Wraith's stabbing attacks, but can't do much else, leaving it mostly to the winged Pikmin to fight, while the rest deal with the floor goo it spits up and the environmental hazards. The rocks get one too, but for me, that one seemed rare. It's still an amazing boss fight though, probably the best one we've seen so far for its sheer complexity. Once we beat it, Olimar is safe. We take him back to the Drake, he gives us the key, and we head home to save our people, dropping these two off in the process since their ship kinda got broken by the Meyerklop. And that's Pikmin 3. Wow, was that a good game. I have no real notes for it. Sure, I have tiny issues, but coming off the sheer amount of bullshit that was Pikmin 2, this game's issues seems like nitpicks at best. The biggest issue I have is the post-game story added alongside the Olimar mission log thing from earlier. And while I like it, it's 10 missions long and they're not all that engaging. Supposedly, this is about Olimar and Louis going back to get Sheila because the president didn't want company property left on a strange planet, that have this weird story about Louis being mad that Olimar dare call him out on his bullshit. Seriously, this guy fucking sucks. The only thing I like that it does is that its first cutscene ties into the ending shot of the base game's credits. That's neat. Otherwise, I don't really care about it as a story. They somehow snuck in us collecting ship parts again, which is cute, but it gets outplayed later. You only get 2 cutscenes, and the only missions that actually matter to the goal you've been told to care about are 4, 9, and 10, because they ask you to carry either a specific part or gather the rest of them. There is no reason to care about the other 7 because it's just padding for the sake of it and giving Olimar more playtime in a game where he is a goal, not a playable character. I liked the gameplay of this, but unlike the mission log at the start of the game, this is too long to justify what story you get out of it. However, that is my only big gripe for the game. Post-game stuff added in for a port that is, when you get down to it, just a worse version of what the next game has to offer. Otherwise, I have no issues. I think Alf is a little boring as a character, and if anything a little bitchy and self-aggrandizing, but he's not a bad guy, he's just more eager than anything. Brittany is a bit blunt and doesn't want to share the food we collect, but I still like her as she is. I love her design and this back and forth she has with Alf that comes off more like siblings than anything, which is why I was confused people were shipping them, but then I realized it was the only het couple you could do in the franchise at that point, so it became popular by default. Charlie, on the other hand, is just the best. He is so silly, so cute, so in charge, and just a dad. I love him. He has a rubber ducky as a comfort object. You can see it floating around the ship when you select a landing site or have a group powwow. He's so kind to the Pikmin and really understanding and knowledgeable about what he's talking about. He's probably my second favorite character behind Olimar at this point, if not my actual favorite. I don't know, we'll have to see by the end how I feel. This even extends to the Piklopedia, which everyone uses to express how good 2 is. I know it wasn't in the original release of the game, but we have Deluxe now, and if I'm not going to discount the addition to the Kingdom Hearts franchise, I'm not going to discount it here. Just because it wasn't there at launch doesn't mean its inclusion now is wholly negative. And don't get me wrong, I can understand fans being upset at its absence, but it being here at all is a positive in my eyes. Also says the developers listen to what fans want, so there's a win. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, Olimar has thought out and detailed notes about each creature, and Louis gives more of a way to eat the damned things. Still not funny. In 3, that bit is still there, but Olimar sounds more like a documentary narrator than anything, and Louis an epic mealtime recipe reader. The 3 main characters, though, all have different takes on them. From, I don't know, an actual character perspective. Alf talks about everything in a more combat-oriented mindset. Brittany talks about them like a real person, or in a more practical way, like riding a dwarf Bulborg into battle if you were able to tame it. And Charlie comes at it from more of a dad perspective, like, why can't they just stay cute when they get older? Or trying to get bigger and stronger to protect his team, and just general nice things. These log entries don't invalidate anything I've said above. If anything, it reinforces it given how much character there is in these. Hell, if you want to go the extra mile, the reason these things weren't in here to begin with was because we had the fruit files, which are just Brittany talking in depth about each and every fruit type you collect, while also adding personal flavor to it. It actually grounds Brittany into being a more thoughtful character than the base game, where she mostly bickers with Alf and talks about not wanting to share food. Those are funny traits, and I love her to bits and pieces. This edition is nothing short of humanizing, and I love that for her. Pikmin 4's isn't as great, I'll admit, as that game has the Piklopedia and treasure log be held by separate characters, so they don't get much characterization outside of these logs. But the things Dalmo and Schnaz say are at the very least interesting and deeply humanizing for what are effectively data logs on legs. Louis' bit is still stale, but I will admit, him muscling through and trying to eat things or sell it for a profit is a new twist on it that at least makes it more bearable on some level. Pikmin 3 is not a masterpiece, but it's exactly what it needed to be, and for that, I'm grateful. It's short, sweet, to the point, and overall, delightful. I've heard a lot of people call this the worst game of the series because it's too easy, but that's always sounded like they were mad they didn't get their dick slammed in every 5 feet. It's an attitude I've hated for as long as I've been doing this. Don't blame the game because you aren't challenged by it. There's a difference between good game design and pandering to children. If you want a hard game, either go play one or make it more challenging for yourself, especially since this is a game that is supposed to be played by children. At its most basic form, it's puzzle solving and type matchups. It's Pikimon more than anything, and that's a good thing. It's not the Ultra Challenge 2 was for some people, but it's at least something that gets your brain scratching, especially in those challenge modes. This puzzle in particular is a bitch, especially when going for those data files, but still, it's not impossible. It just asks you to pay attention. The difficulty doesn't come from damage. Hell, I only lost 2 captains the whole game, and that was in the final boss. No, it comes from multitasking and keeping track of 3 squads, which is way harder than anything 2 asks you to do in that department. Pikmin 3 is a good game, and it deserves more love, if not for anything than the character work alone. This cast is perfect for what they need to do, and that's something I can't say for 2. I at least like all 3 characters here, rather than only like 1.5 of the 4 in 2. Go play Pikmin 3. It needs the same attention and love that the games surrounding it have been given by the fact they came out on more successful consoles. It deserves better than being the worst of the best, as some people say. Pikmin 4, the true meaning of life, God, and the universe of gaming. Repeating the sins of Pikmin 3, the developers took 10 years to make this, and that stirred people up into a frenzy like Kingdom Hearts 3. And for a while, it was like the second coming of Christ was on every Nintendo Switch in mid-2023. Not that that's a bad thing, I love this game too, but for a while, it was impossible to escape this game in the YouTube sphere of gaming videos. Was that deserved? Were the comparisons to 2 too harsh? Was the hyperfixation on lore worth it? Is the doggo the worst thing in the franchise since, well, Louis? Let's find out. This is Pikmin 4. We open on this lovely beige world with Olimar narrating, who sounds oddly Hispanic this time. Not that that's a problem, just interesting how his voice changed in between 3 Deluxe and here. We awake to find him passed out on the ground, and the dolphin embedded into the planet's face. Might as well put a bell on all the parts at this point. We discover Pikmin again, along with a big dog, and head out to find those ship parts. We get a really nice tutorial in someone's house?
The lore, guys, the lore!
Well, ain't that a shake-up to the formula? Oh, this game's delightful already. We land, and the Pikmin run off for some reason. Olimar and Moss, the big dog, do a pretty seamless job tutorializing us on both the basics of Pikmin and Canine Min actions. Honestly, I really like how the dogs play in this. It makes squad running easier since they glob onto the puppo, and it allows some more interesting puzzles, like breaking things or jumping up ledges, which you couldn't do before. I have more to say on the dogs later, but just know that they're a positive. Along with all of that, we get our first enemy encounter.
10 seconds later.
Once the thing is dead, we get the analog radio, allowing us to send out the distress signal to the rescue corps that is set to save Olimar. From there, we switch perspectives to the rescue corps, an elite troop of space voyagers trained to save people lost in space, and for fuck's sake, do none of you know what safe landing means? Seriously, what is it about PNIF error code that makes it impossible for anyone but me, apparently, to land on the surface of this place safely? Oh, hey, speaking of which, following in the footsteps of a lot of modern games, Pikmin 4 sees the player making their own character and choosing the color of their ship, their crew's uniforms, and the dog's collar. And honestly, I wish it was more robust. Not that it's bad, but it could have been nice to unlock more face, hair, eye, or even suit color options throughout the game. Well, okay, you do get one more, but that's something for later. Even just letting us pick the mouth and eyes separately would do wonders for this system. Or even just not locking faces to single body types, or making the body type a slider so we can have more unique captains. I should know, while looking for footage of people picking different colors so I didn't have to play the opening 5 more times, I found someone who made my exact character in pink and blue. So that right there tells you how little options there are to work with that look semi-decent. Although, I gotta say, good choice on the color combo there, Rodney. Super cute. Anyway, I typically like doing canonical builds of characters for these things, like with Joker in Persona 5. His name is Ren, and I play the game as Ren, just like I would for Sora, or I guess Ephemer in this case. If I were to do a playthrough of a Pokemon game, I'd just name the character their canonical name for footage gathering, and on my personal playthrough, I'd run as myself. I bring this up because Pikmin 4 technically has a canonical character in Emma, and I wanted more unique footage than a lot of other people who use her as their player character to talk about the game in a more critical light. Plus, on my first playthrough, when Red saw my character, he said, and I'm quoting, "Aw, he looks just like you." And I mean, come on, I'm only a human present type thing. What am I again? How am I not supposed to melt at a comment like that? So, given the nature of this project, I thought it appropriate to have this design in here for him. Love you, baby. Also, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on just the character creation, but it's kinda a big part of the appeal of the game. But in keeping in Pikmin's tradition of adding one more playable character every game, 1 had 1, 2 had 2, 3 had 3, and 4 gives you 4 body types to pick from right at the start. And every time I think about that, I smile a little. Also, I have nowhere else to put this in, but Billy! Alright, we can go now. I pick my character, choose my name, and we land on Pinif. I picked green because hello, but I also think it looks the best on everyone. Looking at the other colors in the tutorial was nice, and I did end up liking all of them the more time I spent with them. It's just, I feel that green looks the best with everyone's skin tone, hair color, and I don't know, it just looks the best to me. It's my favorite color after all. I'm told how to walk and then immediately find the best pupper this side of the apocalypse, Ochi. I will kill and die for him. This good boy acts as a second captain of sorts and a Pikmin all rolled into one. The first obstacle we tackle together is this potted plant, which Ochi pulls, letting us get through, and finding another member of the corpse, Colin. That's gonna bug the fuck out of me the whole game, isn't it? Colin asks me who I am, and gets up to speed on what's been happening in the last minute of me being here, and gives me my Rescue Quartz tablet, which is a cute little nod to the Switch's handheld mode. It's something Nintendo likes doing, and it's a fun gag across the games. After we learn how to use it, we 3 go off to find the captain, finding our hub ship for the game, the SS Shepherd, in the process. Following that, we learn that caves are back. Oh joy. More on those in a bit, but we dive on in, where we find Commander Shepard, oh hey, I get that reference, who is deathly afraid of grubs and has us kill them. She remarks on our immediate bond with her dog, who is trained only to listen to her, even though A, he's a literal puppy, and B, we found him alone. So I think he just likes the company, but who am I to disagree? Shepard entrusts me with Ochi, and we leave the cave, plant the flag to show that it's all cleared, and get to the ship to find that it's out of power. From there, we discover these rare sparkly treasures we can take back to my ship after calling it back to base, along with the red onion. We sprout some Pikmin, gather a fork, some kind of bell, and a Game Boy Advance SP. We even get an in-universe reason why the items are given weird names. Shepard gave the ship an AI, and I find that cute. After which, we end the day and have a lovely chat. These chats replace the logs at the end of every day. And you know what? I'm gonna be that bitch and say I love these. They make the crew feel more like a family and that they want to spend time together and care about what each other think and feel on a given topic, and put up with their respective quirks and failings as people. It's a lot more engaging than 2 and 3's mail and logs respectively, as they were either not all that interesting or, more so, just a recap of the stated goal. They were cool, but not the best they could have been. These are character building, the mail was world building. But when the world is effectively this planet, I don't really care that Louie's grandma misses him after a while. The next morning, we get another recap of what we're doing, gather more Pikmin, learn about the new number cap for Pikmin, and head off to the Sun-Speckled Terrace. Pikmin 3 went for realism, which can be good, but it's one of the quickest to age in terms of graphical fidelity or even just art direction. 3 kinda gets a pass given how cartoony the characters look in those areas, but 4 goes for more of a plastic toy-like look for everything, while still looking realistic. It's a happy middle ground that makes everything work for the visuals they were going for, and even continuing the themes of the last game. The more areas you get, the more varied locations you uncover. While there isn't a snow area, it makes sense given that you're covering like a 5-mile radius, not the whole planet. The further you go into the game, the closer you get to civilization and eventually into a person's house, showing that life on this planet isn't as dead as we once thought. We've just never encountered it before. We land on the far west side of the terrace, get told how the clock works, and am able to run wild killing things and collecting literal piles of diamond that we call raw materials and can be used for other things. These piles act like the fragments in 3, but in this game, the Pikmin just stay at base, allowing you to multitask better and not have to babysit as much. We learn about nectar and enter our first real cave, where we can kind of fuck around. Something I enjoy about Ochi is that he can charge at things and either break them or knock them off ledges or walls, allowing for more interesting problem solving than, oop, I need yellows, guess I'll come back later. You can even find those raw materials in random objects, so that's fun. And right after, we have found the win button for Pikmin 4, Ice Pikmin. These guys function like rocks where they do something on contact but have the same damage output as winged or white Pikmin, meaning that they aren't one-man armies, but that contact damage is filling up an ice meter that freezes things once it's filled. And no joke, no lie, this thing breaks the game. It actively makes bosses a joke because you can just use Spicy Spray, charge Ice Pikmin at them, and win in a matter of seconds. The way this is mitigated is by not giving you the onion for the Ice Pikmin till the 4th area of the game, and even then you have to go through a fire cave to get it. These things carry the same scarcity and resource management time of purples in 2 because they also have a use in the overworld, that being freezing water to get treasures. I will say this becomes less useful as the game progresses due to Ochi being able to swim and you having blues, which negates the water hazard in the first place. But their utility doesn't end there. They still have use in combat and even some caves which make other Pikmin types too cold to move unless you heat up the room. I love these guys because I feel like the devs made the early game challenging enough with the puzzles needed to get the stuff you need while easing up on Ice Pikmin's necessity later on without flat out removing that versatility that comes with Pikmin in general. In this first cave, we find what are known as Flarlick. These desaturated onions allow us to add 10 more to our overall Pikmin total. When you first start the game, you can only take 20 out at a time, and as you go, the more Flarlicks you'll find and be able to take out more Pikmin. I could only assume this was done to make the difficulty curve smoother, as in past games you could just get 100 Pikmin on day 1 or 2 and steamroll anything in your path if you were patient enough. Now you start with 1/5 of that and have to be more careful. This also bugged a lot of people, but the enemies don't respawn in the overworld. In past games they would do so every 3 days, but unless you're just slow as fuck, that's rarely a problem people encountered, so it doesn't matter. The enemies don't respawn in caves either until you collect all the things in it, so each time is a little less stressful, and you don't need to refight bosses if you lose too many Pikmin due to the number cap that's placed on you. All of this combines in making treasure collecting feel more fun and relaxing. Pikmin has always been kind of billed as a relaxing series, and while 1 has that pressure to it via the narrative, the gameplay loop itself is relaxing, and the only game to stray away from it was 2 in its caves. The rest of the series, even Hey Pikmin, keeps this mentality going in, and it's one I vastly prefer. Still in the cave, by the way, we find our first castaway, Russ, who is our lead scientist and item shop for the evening. More on him in a bit, but castaways in general are weird. You will always get the same castaways in the same order every playthrough, no matter what cave they're in. There are only 3 that are in any way set from a story perspective, but again, we'll get there. We exit the cave to discover only 1/6 of the time we spent down there has allotted on the surface. This was, apparently, the developer's way to address the world-breaking immersion of 2's caves that just freeze time while you're in them. This change doesn't amount to much, but I applaud the effort because it never really affected my days that much. Reason being, even if you go into a cave during a countdown, you leave it at the start of the countdown again anyway, so it's not much of a deal breaker. We exit the cave, are asked what Pikmin we want to bring with us, seeing as caves have a different type matchup to the overworld, so they ask you what you want when you enter and exit them. Start running around and find a similar set of crystals to our base over there that is being guarded by a fiery blowhog. So we kill it, and lo and behold, we can move the base now since the map is so big. Ain't that neat? We spend most of the day clearing the area and making paths, when we enter the next cave to find yellows that allow us to break electric walls again, and get treasures that are programmed to not be bonked down. I would know, I tried. The only noticeable change to yellows is their digging speed is faster, and that's really it. I would have thought blues would have gotten it since they dig underwater, making their muscles stronger from the resistance, but I guess we gotta keep hitting shuffle on these yellow bastards, don't we? The only other thing of note is that we find Schnoz, that treasure appraiser that I mentioned earlier. All this really tells us is that there's more than just our crew we're looking for, and to be on alert. We end the day clearing the electric wall, getting another Flarlick, and pushing down this paper bag ramp. The next morning, it appears Ochi has doubled in size, and is now rideable, with the added benefit of letting Pikmin ride on his big fat lovable ass. Oh, and speaking of him, we now have access to his pup drive shop that Commander Shepard runs. For every castaway you bring home, you get 1 pup drive point, which can be spent to level up Ochi's stats, like his speed, strength, Pikmin plucking speed, swimming speed, his stun capabilities, whether or not he can bite flying enemies, all that stuff. It makes him a unique asset that you can spec into for what you need, and I really like that. It's much more interesting than just getting the stuff in the same order every time and making you play in a specific way. No, you choose what you want him to be at any given moment. And it's great. The more player choice, the better in my mind. And some abilities like his Rush and Chomp can be leveled up more to stun things longer or deal more damage. And that's just great, man. And every time you level up a skill, Shepard gives you a treat for Ochi which heals him, which is incidentally why I never taught Ochi self-healing till the end of the game. And I like how this speaks to Shepard and Ochi's relationship, because at the end of the day, he is her dog. We're just borrowing him for our job. We love him to death, but she's still his owner, and how protective he is of us shows how well trained he was prior to coming here, and even feeds into her fear of bugs and other creatures living on this planet. He'll protect her with absolute violent gusto, and she carefors and trains him to be the best like no pup ever was. And I think that's a nice little character feedback loop. Moving on to Russ, he gives you the treasure tracker, and his shop has suit upgrades for you, collar upgrades for Ochi, and tools to make things easier, as well as items you can find in the overworld, all in exchange for raw materials. These things are treated both as building items and currency, to the point that it's the main collectible of the game, even more so than treasures or people. And most castaways have side quests for you to do that net you more raw materials, and these things are so valuable the whole game because of how they're implemented. I was never frustrated on needing them or where to find them. It was simply a matter of doing the thing, and I got what I needed. It's such a nice system that doesn't ask more of the player beyond use your head and resource management skills. That is the fundamental building blocks of Pikmin. Making the main collectible a currency and a means of integrating with the world around you is one of the coolest ideas I've ever seen in a video game, and I wish more games did stuff like that. In Pikmin 3, you also had upgrades to your suits, but rather than them being gotten by beating bosses like in 2, or bought like here in 4, 3 just had you find them and get them back to the Drake. I think this was an interesting decision because it made the game as hard or as easy as you like it, just like here in 4. Only one suit and collar upgrade are needed to 100% the game. The rest can be tackled by just Ochi's pup drive, and the same was true in 3. These suit upgrades were helpful, but not necessary, and I think that goes a long way into why both of these games are so good. Player choice. It's not the most in-depth choice in the world, but it's at least better than punishing you for not having them. Although, I think the fact the game assumes you have them is good game design. It's certainly better than KH2's growth abilities. No, I will never stop beating that drum. I really don't like that aspect of the game. Anyway, we go back to the terrace, and now have access to the almighty jump button that a lot of games are surprisingly resistant to having for some reason. And now that we have it, we can conquer the playground. Or play in the dirt, you know, whatever's fun. This also lets us just charge into enemies, stun them, and have Pikmin be flung into them, and kill them almost instantly. God, this game is fucking fun. We find the yellow onion, bring it back to the red onion, and ooh, that's pretty. In Pikmin 3, the onion was this watercolor hybrid thing that looked like a strawberry. But here, every time you get a new onion color, it merges with the one at base and takes up a certain amount of the onion's surface. And eventually, when you get all 8 types, it looks like this thing you'd find in a toddler's bedroom. There are even multiple of the yellow and blue onions later that are meant for players to find if they're having a hard time getting them in the terrace, so they aren't hitting a roadblock halfway in. This is what I call quality of life upgrades as opposed to babyifying a game. This doesn't make the game any easier, it just lets you play it your way, and I wish more people would think in a more than binary fashion when it comes to these things, because it's more nuanced than people give it credit for. We then find this half-completed cookie dough bridge that takes raw materials to build. We do this by converting them into half-baked cookie dough, having the Pikmin slam their faces into it like everything else, and plot it down. Once the pieces are all there, the dough finishes baking, and la, she's done.
I think you meant to say voila instead of lala.
I did.
Yes, I know it's clay, but look at that and tell me it doesn't look like Keebler Elf cookies with a straight face. We then run by this peculiar looking fella. I'll be back in a moment, I have severe ADHD, don't take it personally. And find just the biggest pumpkin I've ever seen. I wonder how much it'd sell at Goofy's stall. We fuck around the rest of the day collecting things and enter another cave, where I finally remember I have quick commands, which are a godsend in this game, because the menu has like a whole second delay if you want to use it, and it's annoying. So these are my final quick command setup. If you would like to use them, be my guest. This cave is where we learn how to control Ochi independently of the captain. And yeah, he pretty much works just like us, but with a jump button. I will say the conveyor belt puzzles in this game are nice. They're not mind-bending or anything, but they do engage your brain, and I appreciate that. We then rescue one of the two best ways to farm raw material in the game, Kingsley, who loves flowers, and wants you to bloom 300 Pikmin flowers, which can be done with the ultra spicy spray. Every time you do this, he gives you 30 pieces, and it's great. There's another character who does this too with sprouting Pikmin. So there's a nice feedback loop with these two that lets you just farm them if you need to. And with that day done, we have enough Sparklium to enter another area. But we aren't quite done with the terrace yet. So we head back there to confront this strange man with a familiar suit, a big old nose, and moss for some reason. But that's not important right now, we have a person to save. Thus we enter what are known as Dandori battles. These are essentially time management and optimization battles with a computer AI that gets harder as the game progresses, testing your skill on how Pikmin works in general. You're given a set number of Pikmin that are type specific in every challenge, and have to find the best way to get more points by gathering more Pikmin items and bonus finds than the CPU can. Your reward for winning these is pieces of raw material and what are known as leaflings, which this odd person has created by putting castaways into their onion, causing them to become all hairy and sprout a Pikmin leaf on their head. It's actually kinda fucked up when you think about it. Makes me wonder what the Pikmin are actually thinking if this is what it does to a being of higher intelligence. Once we win, the red leafling runs off with moss like Team Rocket before them. You're off with a new player! And we have to find them in the other biomes. Oh fucking joy. After we leave the cave, the Pikmin send the leafling back to the ship, but we can't read their ID. We can't do anything right now, so go about spelunking and find our next crew member, Dingo, who's basically the crew's musclehead with a heart of gold trope. In another cave, we find Dalmo, the Piclopedia guy I mentioned earlier, and we're gonna cheese our way into getting the blue onion early. We get some blue sprouted and end the day. The next morning, we all contemplate what to do with the passed out leafling, and come to the conclusion we need to find our medical expert to figure out what to do. So it's our job to find them. Today is more of the same, getting a Flarlick and dealing with the red leafling in a battle, and then they fuck off. Nothing too special. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this area, the Blossoming Arcadia as it's called. It's one of the more vertical areas, and I just don't like how it's constructed. The only thing it's got going for it is the cherry blossom petals, but there's just nothing for me to really gravitate towards, which is good because we don't spend much time here, given that the amount of Sparklium I have isn't far from the next zone's minimum range. The next morning, the rest spot uncovers a small area to let things breathe a bit, and we find an overturned ship that I think is called the KK Slider, but I could be wrong about that. Oh well, that'll be something for later, I think. Day 8 is more of the same. Treasure cleanup, cave spelunking, all that jazz. But we do get rocks back, which is super neat. I miss these guys. One thing all the caves from this point onward, except one, have in common is that it will end with a boss fight of some kind that drops a treasure and a castaway. Some even have mid-stage bosses that do this, and you can't get either until you beat the boss. You can leave, but these gates stop you from getting what you came here for, so you can't armor cannon beetle your way out of this. You have to try. It makes them feel like you're a knight plunging into the dungeon to save the innocent bystanders. God, Pikmin as a D&D campaign world would kick ass. At the end of this cave, we find the doctor, Yanni, who has seen some shit. My god, what is with those eyes? At least with Russ, you could say he went to the Dr. Insano's school of eyewear, but here? I think we just need to hire a therapist, Captain. The next morning, we learn that Yanni has a working theory on how to cure the leaflings, but in order to test it, we need to do night expeditions, which has been a thing fans have been wanting for a long time. Every game has the day timer to make it so that you can't spend infinite time fucking around to do things. You've got roughly 13 to 20 minutes per day depending on the game, but the in-game reason has always been that it's too dangerous for us or the Pikmin to be out past sunset because things get more dicey at night. But in this game, they give you the chance to experience that, and it's great. They aren't as long as the day timer and act more like the killing enemies challenges in Pikmin 3. Once all the enemies are dead, the level is over. But if you can't kill everything, it's also okay to just stall out the timer. Both solutions can work, and I think that shows a level of thought put into these that a lot of games miss. So when on these expeditions, you must protect this ant colony looking thing called luminals. Get it? Luminate all? It's cute. And to fight off monsters, you get the best color type, the glorious, green, and possibly made of gamma radiation, the glow Pikmin. These little guys are essentially ghosts that can't be burned, shocked, drowned, or hurt by anything that isn't being eaten or crushed. They function like the Bulbmin from Pikmin 2. I didn't bring them up there because I only ever got like 5 my entire playthrough, and talking about them there would have made this more redundant than it already is. Plus, I like these guys better. Their designs are so cute, so well done, and the fact they have one eye bigger than the other is just, it's so adorable. The way you get more is by having them carry the star bits back to the luminol, or its smaller cousin, the tricknol, which acts as a decoy so you can kill enemies away from the luminol itself. And I gotta point this out, the music when the luminol is being attacked is truly frightening. Like, holy shit, that is some tense-ass music. On top of that, glow Pikmin have a charge attack like Ochi that can be used in tandem to his charge that lets them take care of things easier. As well as when the night ends, you get glow seeds depending on how well you did. So you can bring glow Pikmin into caves like Bulbmin, but you get to decide when and how they're used rather than the game doing it for you in specific sublevels. This also applies to things like bomb and ice rocks, electric shocks, this game's version of ultra bitter spray, and health packs. Just nice things to keep in your inventory instead of making them an active hazard to deal with all the time. The night expeditions aren't super varied, they just get more challenging as you go, and I tend to just blitz through them so I don't have to have 2 different cutscenes for the same conversation. So I felt I should get them out of the way now, given that I won't be bringing them up again beyond a passing nod. The whole point of this though, as I said, was to cure the leafling, which will add to Ochi's pup drive. I just love this game's central loop, man, it's so good. After a literal week of doing night expeditions, we get back to daytime things with one of my favorite areas, the Serene Shores. The gimmick here is that at noon the shoreline recedes, and allowing for more Pikmin types to walk around if you haven't gotten the blue onion yet. It lets the day be split more down the middle and thus leaves you to compartmentalize a lot more than the other places. I think going forward there should be more areas that do things like this. There's even a little sandcastle you get to climb and it's just a nice set piece. Day fortnight is collecting and getting a lay of the land. We do some caves, get the wing Pikmin, and I just want to point out this boss fight here, cause look at this dope ass thing. It's a beady long legs variant called the Groovy Long Legs, love that. That is a disco ball that forces your Pikmin to dance with an airborne gas, and it's great, man. The beat is sick, the movement patterns are nice, and just in general, it's one of the best bosses in the franchise, mainly because it's not impossibly hard, but it is memorable. Speaking of memorable, I don't think they expected players to use spicy spray on Ochi while you're riding him, cause that looks like he's gonna throw me off the edge. And I never mentioned what you get for beating a boss, but in this case, I have to. When it dies, it lets out an air horn sound and then drops a speaker. That's fucking genius. Whoever designed this boss deserves like 3 raises and a nice night out on the town. Anyway, we rescue Puddle, that is the most non-binary name I've ever heard, who is a hairstylist. He lets you change your appearance and entire body structure on a whim. They're basically the in-game reason for why you can change your character later if you want. He also has a request for you to rescue a certain number of leaflings for a cosmetic surprise, so that's a nice incentive. Also, I adore your hair. After futzing about for a few days, I confront Mr. Steal Your Crew, meaning meaning we need to Dan his dory so we can get to the next area. We win and are given another leafling. We take it home to cure them, and then head into this game's version of the submerged castle. Something I feel I should point out is that Pikmin 1 and 3 are tangentially similar because of having limited days before death is inevitable, but how the game achieves this is the major difference between them. Pikmin 4 is just Pikmin 2 again, but better. To the point, it reuses enemies, bosses, cave concepts, and layouts. Just everything about the caves is as identical as you can get to Pikmin 2, while still being miles better than it by sheer competence and not having a bug up your ass about difficulty. The engulfed castle proves this point for me, as they are identical, but now you have these guardrails that stop the water wraith from getting to you in a tight corner and trapping you, forcing you to game over. No. What this does is that it gives you a safe space in the dungeon to gather yourself and not get fucked if this thing decides to do donuts for fun. The time limit is a little generous, but still, it's a good use of this one Pikmin type limit. And I wish more caves did this. Even the cave you need the fire suit to enter doesn't do this. And I wish it had. Every type should have a cave like this to show off their unique abilities and strengths, not just water. Other than those small differences, the caves are identical. The other caves that borrow elements of 2's caves are a lot more varied. Much like with 1 and 2 similarities, I see the evolution of things as they are used, and want to celebrate where appropriate, and discuss where I find necessary. The next morning, we cure the leafling we got the day before, and it turns out to be our ace pilot, Bernard, meaning our crew is back together at last. And he tells us where we might find Olimar. Also, he and Dingo have this nice little back and forth, and it's one of the only times characters besides Colin and Shepard talk to anyone, and it gives these two boyfriend energy. Here is your new ship, Internet, the SS Bingo. Sail them into calm galaxies. After that trip down memory lane, I play dress up for a bit, before the crew makes the assumption that the red leafling we've been chasing is in fact Captain Olimar. You know, the whole reason we're here to begin with? I'm glad you did, because I sure as hell forgot. So, we start heading off to Hero's Hideaway, where the game makes me redo the intro thing with Olimar and his Pikmin running off for no reason, leading us to fight this weird version of Quagsire's Paldean form, because it's admitting a signal the Pikmin can't resist. Even though this never happens again when we fight this thing, but alright. This place has us gathering 3 playing cards of different Sue faces that correspond with the number pad on this safe, which, when opened, allows us to finally Dandori this guy into the ground and unmask him like the Scooby gang that we are. The battle wasn't too challenging. I think I reset once or twice to better optimize, but otherwise it wasn't too bad. The big thing this battle introduces is the sneak bomb, which you should immediately gun for, because if you get it to your opponent's base, they lose 100 points, and it drops golden containers that are worth a lot. On top of that, unless the AI is bringing stuff to the base directly, you can get a lot of the gold back to your base and get a big boost to your score. After we win, the guy says he misses his wife and kids and passes out, while Moss leaves for some reason. We take the little guy home to cure him, and it is Captain Olimar, whoever would have guessed. It's not like him being one of the only characters with a cream-colored suit, and bright red gloves didn't tip me off or anything. No, not at all. Y'all had me totally fooled. He thanks us for rescuing him, we get this nice back and forth about what coding the Shepherd should get after this, as a nod to Pikmin 2, and we set off to make the universe's longest bus route. And that's it, the game's over. We say goodbye to the Pikmin planet as we blast off, and cut to the credits where the Pikmin are doing cute things in the areas we've explored so far. It's very wholesome, and that's how I feel about the whole game. The end credits even thank you and say this wouldn't be possible without your player character name. That's fucking adorable, man. This game's great. While it's not a masterpiece, it's a decent length, and all the characters are What the fuck is he doing here? No, 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 why are you here, you piece of shit? What the hell? Please tell me you die and I never have to see you again. Tell me you're just an Easter egg for fans. Please don't make him the central focus of the story now. For the love of God, I've suffered enough at the hands of this man. Oh, and he took the dog. Fuck me, I'm gonna have to go after him, aren't I? God damn it, son of a bitch, Louie. The game cuts from the credits to the Shepherd about to head back in hyperspace, when Shepard tells the Shepherd to heal like a good ship, and we get a scene that's shot like a stage play for some reason. Ochi is sick, and we can't figure out why, but Olimar runs up to his mark to exposit that OG has been leaflingified, and we have to go back to cure him. Remember when I said this was a lot like Pikmin 2? Yeah, it does the fake out ending that is mostly Louie's fault too. Don't believe me? Keep watching. Shit's fucked. We're told to find 3 people from Kopai who can help with this problem, and that right there was enough to keep me going. To see my gang in this game is gonna make the Louie stuff so much more bearable. So we set out to find the Kopai kids in Giant's Hearth. But first,
story time!
Remember that ship from earlier? Well, turns out it's the Dolphin, and Olimar has a tale to tell. A shipwreck tale. This is, effectively, a second version of Pikmin 1 put into Pikmin 4 for free, letting you get back to the series' roots in a unique and charming way that isn't just added to sell a port. No, this mode remixes the levels of the base game but puts in the parts you need to fix the ship, and it's just good, man. It's solidly told, well implemented, and just charming. It's also replayable if you want to do it again or try and get a better time. The time limit is also cut in half, so instead of 30 days, you have 15, and that really ramps up the pressure. Not that it's super difficult, but it does feel like I'm always going to be just shy enough of getting everything fast enough. It makes it go from the original's 1 a day mentality to, at the minimum, 2 a day, and that makes a lot of difference. Moss is also just as helpful as Ochi, but she has her abilities given to her in a set order, meaning that she's not going to be throwing curveballs at you anytime soon. That's not a bad thing though. This is a side story, so her being a constant in it makes complete sense to me. And you get Moss's swallow ability just for talking to Olimar. I think that's neat. It lets Ochi carry things faster and stops enemies or Dandori Pikmin from trying to take your items. It's quite literally a game changer. This is what charming means to me. It's something done well that wasn't needed, but is still a delight. And the more updated controls to this game from even Pikmin 3, the more annoying lock-on notwithstanding, is just a charming little addition to an already fantastic package. The game even goes out of its way to explain how he became a Leafling. So remember back in Pikmin 1 with that possible bad ending I brought up? Well, Pikmin 4 makes that its central hook, because no matter how fast you are, the rescue corps won't get there fast enough and Olimar's life support will die out, meaning the Pikmin will try to collect him, and we get Leafling Olimar like at the end of the first game. I've heard a lot of people say this retcons the ending of 1, but I'd argue that it's more that he came back here and then had to do this song and dance again. If you remember, 3 Deluxe had him do that too. And again, I just find this so charming I can't be mad at it. Hell, it was so good I sat there long enough I got a tan. And look at that, the Dolphin's back to her former glory. And Olimar even thanks you for hearing his story. I love this man so much, let him run the freight company, he deserves the low effort job for once. Listening to this story though unlocks what I think is the hardest part of the game. The White Sage Leaf Challenges. These are 10 gruelingly hard Dandori maps that challenge the player on their ability to multitask and make smart routes throughout the floor layout. I haven't mentioned the other types of Dandori maps because I hadn't done them yet. I was saving them for the post-game so I could deal with getting the cure for them all at once. These maps are more about collecting under a strict time limit, and the amount of time between a platinum and a failure is mighty small. I think level 5 is a good one though. It's not my favorite, that probably goes to the conveyor belt one, but level 5 is just straight up routing and timing. It's really fun to pull off. I would have been faster if I had Ochi's full rush ability with max stun, but still pretty great. Level 10 is also pretty good too, as it deals with the water wraith again, but it's more about neutralizing it as a threat and then dealing with it as it wanders around. Oh, and the best part of levels 5 and 10 is that you get the illustrious white and purple onions to add to the collection. Finally being able to grind out Pikmin types easily and not have to just go to caves for it. These are easily worth the White Sage stuff alone, because all you have to do to get them is get it back to the Beagle. Your rank doesn't matter, and that's such a good decision in my mind. I didn't mention this earlier, but in this game the little number plants that let you get Pikmin easier don't change color. In prior games, the pellet posies, as they're officially called, would change color regardless of what Pikmin were on the field. In 4, they only cycle between the active colors, but if you only have one color out, they just are that color. And trust me, I had more than 100 of each type in like 3 minutes of grinding. This change is a good thing to me because you don't have to worry about any one type being a commodity. You can just enjoy the game. but it still locks the two most valuable late game Pikmin behind a challenge wall that you have to overcome. If you don't care about rank, then it's just a matter of doing it. But for a lot of Pikmin fans, the challenge of a good rank is also part of the fun. I hope they keep this idea around, it's so good. Dandori in general is just such a fun thing to do in this game, it's honestly a treat in and of itself. I will say, you can tell the devs were working on the DLC for Pikmin 3 and this game at the same time, because a lot of the stuff found there, and even in Olimar's side stuff that's exclusive to Deluxe, was used to test the fanbase's reaction to them. And if I'm being honest, playing the challenges in 3 felt like I was just playing the beta footage of 4. That's not a bad thing. I'd rather the devs do that than take a wild guess at what the fans would like. That at least screams competent ideas at play, but I digress. With the 2 side stories done, we can now head out to find the Kopai kids in Giant's Hearth. For real this time. After searching a few caves, we find a guy from Kopai that fits the build and color of Charlie, but his name is Don Bergman, which sounds like a Bob's Burgers character now that I think about it. Are my guys not here? Like, I knew was going to be a different character, but you couldn't have given me my boy Charlie? The boss you get him from gives you ducking fucks. I mean fucking ducks. Why must you hurt me so, Pikmin 4? I trusted you.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Learn something from this.
Enjoy it, because that is probably the only time I'm ever going to use that joke in my career. We get Don back to the base, and I'm still bummed out that he's not who I wanted him to be, when he asks me to go find his husband, York, and off I go to save the twink. And of course Louis has him, the bastard. He takes him to a Dandori challenge, which we win, but not before he tries to leafify York, but it doesn't work for some reason. Once it's over though, Louis leaves and we have to get the pale blue boy back to our ship. In the meantime, I get the rock onion that was guarded by a giant bulblat, which was uncalled for, and man, I love how this thing's turning out. I encountered that shooting long legs again, and despite this one technically being easier because of OG, it feels more like a scrap because I'm dodging bullets like a bad action movie. It's funny how a single element can make a fight feel more like a scrap, more than waiting for the AI to finish its cycle. It's even guarding a GameCube controller, that makes this thing worth it alone. We just need the Wiimote to go with the nunchucks and we'll have a winning set. Once York wakes up, he tells us that the 3 of them have been eating glow sap, which explains why none of them got turned into leaflings. York tells us, "No, isn't in Giant's Hearth. I haven't mentioned it yet, but she's a veterinarian. That's why she's the one we're after, and she just so happens to be in the primordial thicket, which York allows our ship to locate by overclocking the radar. Giant's Hearth was a nice area. I like the fact it feels like a backyard with like a fireplace and little areas to explore if you're a kid. Hero's Hideaway was just cool for the novelty of exploring a house in a Pikmin game like it's Chibi Robo. Oh hey, that came back around. But the primordial thicket is just pretty in that spooky way you want from like a horror game. In the daylight, it's enchanting and ethereal. It feels ancient and like there's a history here. But at night, it feels like the playground of the Witch of the Woods who wants to eat your socks if you misbehave or something. It's a nice duality to strike, whereas the other areas feel more serene at night, minus the monsters running around. A cute touch I like here is that we're looking for a pink lady, and here we find the pink onion. That's just smart to me. We go after Louis at the final Dandori battle, and since this is the last one, I want to touch on the design of the camera. It's fucking awful. I know this was designed for co-op play, but the split screen makes it almost impossible for me to see what I'm doing, especially when I'm on the right side of the monitor and my character is on the left. Everything about the UI and character info on screen is perfectly fine. It's the fact that my opponent takes up half the screen for no reason. Just put them on a little circle in the right corner of the screen and this problem is solved. The health bars on the Pikmin icons are fine because they're unobtrusive to the player's experience. But I don't need to know what the CPU is doing, especially when he's also on my screen. Hell, even just doing Lego split screens where it would just phase in and out of each other is a better idea than this. What the fuck, Nintendo? Anyway, we beat him, get back, and she tells us that we need a sample of a dog who's never been leafified. So Moss is out, but Yanni discovers a log about a dog's den, which seems to be our best lead. This is compounded by Olimar saying Louis will most likely go after that dog now that Moss is no longer available. With that warning in mind, I go around, collect rewards for side quests, talk to this guy who is definitely a Josuke fan, and head off to clean up the rest of the game. Yeah, Louie's in the final dungeon of the game, big shocker. I gather more glow sap, clean shop in all the areas, and platinum all the Dandori challenges I haven't done yet, so the leaflings can be cured, leading to everyone but Louie being accounted for. And honestly, one of my favorite aspects of this game is how your little community grows. It starts with you, Colin, and Shepard, but the more people you get, the more you see what this world is like, and how all these different planets are in relation to each other. I love how as you rescue more people, they get you more raw materials, and expand the camp a little so everyone can talk and have space to be in their own little camps, or make new friends. It lends into the feeling of hope the series goes for. Hope in the face of danger, of loss, of death, of being left behind, it all ties in here. Most of the people don't want anything but for you to explore for them, or to show them one of every monster or treasure, or even a specific treasure family. Some don't even want that. They just want you to bring their friends back home safely. And you know what? I consider that to be a solid motivation for any game. The characters are super interesting too, like a streamer, a school teacher, and just a lot of different types of people. Hell, there's a school club here on a field trip of all things. How weird is that? This one guy, Frizz, wants you to show him the music family of treasures, which you can only complete in the final dungeon for some reason, and in return, he gives you the lineup horn, meaning you can now use the swarm ability from the first 2 games. Who put this late into the game? I demand to know, because it is the worst possible decision. Sure, it's a cute Easter egg, but it's literally the end of the game. What could I possibly use this for besides making Ochi have an aneurysm? Other than that minor gripe, the way this game deals with base camp is amazing. It's cozy, it's safe, it's inviting, and I absolutely love it to bits and pieces. And I'm gonna need that warm, fuzzy feeling because the final cave is up next. The Cavern for a King is this game's answer to the Dream Den. And you know what, dear viewer? This was the single best dungeon in the game. It's a nice challenge full of bosses and harder enemies than normal, but it's not too challenging on any of them. And I even got to the end with over 95 Pikmin. Jesus, I can't believe I haven't talked about this yet. In Pikmin 2, resetting meant you had to close the game and start it up again to get back to your previous save, but because the game saved on every sublevel, it meant the progress was very rarely lost. In Pikmin 4, that feature has been made into a rewind that can be done on the overworld or in caves if you've made a mistake or want to try again. It's in increments of stuff being done, so it could be a few seconds or the beginning of the day, depending on how far back you want to go, and it has increments to let you choose from. This feature made this cave more fun because I could just go back a second and load on any floor without losing anything of worth, because the only thing there are bosses. That's the difference between challenging and obnoxious for anyone wondering. The beauty of Pikmin 4's caves, though, is that you can just leave and come back to any completed floor, and all the enemies are dead until the cave is 100% complete. So it makes caves less of a hassle on things. It makes the game much less insulting in how it challenges you, because you aren't punished for things you couldn't account for. The only real punishment is having to leave and come back, which, in a series designed for children at the end of the day, I'm not gonna pretend is a bad thing. You've done the hard part of killing the monsters, now you just have to gather the bits and pieces after or solve the puzzle. And I like that. This gauntlet in general is pretty good, because the floors are just boss arenas that not only give you cover, but also have extra treasures that aren't just in the bosses for you to kill. I will say, I never fought this Emperor Bulblat though. I just used bombs because fuck this thing. To put it bluntly, I went through the Cavern for a King once, and it took me nearly 2 hours, but I didn't mind that time at all because I felt in control. The Dream Den took me even longer than that, and I had to go in multiple times due to my Pikmin loss, and all I felt was frustration. I'd rather go through the cavern 5 times in a row than touch the Dream Den ever again. The only thing of quality they have in common is their final bosses. Once again, Louie is piloting a giant elemental multi-phase monster that is more spectacles than challenging, but in general I think Pikmin 4's is much better. The Great Sirehound is just fucking cool, man. This thing has unique element-based attacks that change how you deal with its patterns, has 6 separate health bars that all have an element attached to it, and it's just so goddamn cool. The first phase is just you and the dog, meaning you learn how the fight works mechanically. Then you get 5 phases of different elements, and there are candy pop buds in the room prior, meaning you can get some Pikmin of every type to deal with the hazards, plus purples if you want to make the tail easier to grab. Oh, that's another thing. The way you expose its weak spot is by using the same method as the scorpion thing from before. It's such a nice way to teach you the fight before you get there, and each phase tests either your reflexes or dodging capabilities. It even has a phase for glow Pikmin, for God's sake. It uses the same stuff as the Smoky Prog, which they actually made into a bearable enemy in this game. I didn't mention it because it was in the night executions, and I'm fine with that given that you only fight it at night and in this cave, so it gets the respect it deserves in my eyes. But anyway, it uses the toxic smoke from the Prog and makes use of its AoE to make the challenge of this phase getting to the damn thing more than actually fighting. Each time you get his tail, the big goober that he is chases his tail to shake you off and falls on his back wanting belly rubs. Aw, look at him. And once he's been sufficiently love-bombed out of Louie's control, he runs away, leaving Louie, smart dog, and his collar behind, meaning we can get some DNA off of it and finally cure Ochi. We bring Louie back to camp, even though I wanted to leave him there to be puppy chow, but whatever, and take the collar for it.
No!
Head home, cure the good boy, say our final goodbyes to all the castaways, and get the true ending of the game. The Pikmin wave us off, with Moss as their new caretaker. The dolphin is soaring next to us as we make our final departure from PNIF error code, and that is Pikmin 4. This game fucking rules, man. Like, wow, is it good. Sure, it goes on a bit too long near the end for my liking, and some characters won't shut up at the beginning, but otherwise, that's really its only problem. Well, that and the lock-on not switching targets, but that only ever came up when gathering raw material, then in combat. I was upset that the Kopai squad wasn't here, for the sake of the devs not needing to make unique models, and instead opting to just use the character creation faces for all the castaways. But at the same time, I get it. It's cute to see all the combinations the player can look like, and with the fact that there are 50 castaways, that's an interesting way to build your cast. The game does say these characters are related to that group, but still, it would have been nice to see them, and if anything, have that be a fake out to then find the real group as Dandori people, only accessible in the primordial thicket after getting
No!
But again, I get the decision to let Olimar be the only real star from past games so as to not outshine the new crew. And honestly, I love all of them, from their personalities to their dynamics with one another, and just the camaraderie we feel as a unit. This really does feel like a Starfleet family. Colin, the overly cautious father, Shepard, the gung-ho rush first ask questions when you're dead mom, Dingo and Bernard's quiet but cute relationship that is hidden behind macho male posturing, Yanni, the overeager uncle that has no trouble dealing with possible animal murder, and possible people too, and Russ, who is also there, like the family's creepy uncle, who wants to expand science at any cost necessary, to the point that people are concerned about him. And then there's us, the gung-ho newbie that just wants to help. Their voice lines are also really helpful. Shepard sounds raring to go. I also just love the actual things she says, both in and out of dialogue. And just everyone has really fitting actors. Now, if only they'd pay them to voice this shit, I'd be ecstatic. Also, Yanni kept calling us a new blood, and it got annoying after a while. Like he kept taking my blood while I was asleep or something. It speaks to what I said earlier about the game's sense of community and found family in a way. Not saying this whole place is a family, but more a village of small families that have trauma bonded to an extent. This experience is gonna stick with these people for a while, even if they go back to their normal lives. And I think if we ever get to see them again, it'll be nice to see that fleshed out. Pikmin 4 is not a perfect game. It has bland areas, some borrowed ideas from past games, and in general, a runtime that is a bit longer than I think it needed to be for the sake of making this fuck important in a game that didn't need him. I swear to you that rival I pitched earlier would be way better. Like, come on, a Captain Amelia type character with an old frigate in a bottle for a ship that just wants to outdo the great Olimar due to his outstanding legends. Meanwhile, he's over here like, I'm just a dude, ma'am, please calm down. Just something funny would be warranted here that's better than whatever meal Louie had in mind that minute. He even has quests for you to do that, once you've done them, allows you to carry things back to the Onion yourself. And that's really it. It's a cute ability, but it's worthless just like him. Let me be abundantly clear. I like the post-game stuff, but if Louie wasn't the one doing it, I'd be much happier about it. However, it makes up for it by being charming, lovable, and so captivating to look at that I'm surprised the Switch could run it so well. And with that, I think all that's left to do is the rankings. But before we get to the games, we have some accolades to hand out, starting with the best character. I mean, is it a wonder he's the top pick? Olimar is the main character of the franchise, and he has the most work put into him on a level the rest of the characters can't really do. It's simply inarguable that his sheer amount of characterization is astounding. While the rest I listed have some amount of silliness to them that I adore, the rather quiet, contemplative, and matter-of-fact tiredness of Olimar is something that makes him stand out, particularly among Nintendo's mascot characters. But he never falls into the trap of a lot of other male leads in video games, due by virtue of the fact that he never loses hope. He's always looking on the bright side or trying not to lose his way in things. Even when he becomes a monster, he's still not nihilistic, and I love that about his character. Next up, let's try to pull out a little bit and look at the best cast. Yeah, this one shouldn't be a surprise. While I loved the crew in 4, the rather tight-knit group that was Pikmin 3's captains was something that put it over the edge. You have 3 characters with solid dynamics between them that makes them feel like friends and colleagues. The only reason this group has it better than 4 is that there are fewer of them, which means there are less characters to keep track of and write for. So the devs were able to make them have much more abrasive and large personalities. I mean, does Russ have a rubber ducky he cherishes like a toddler? No, he doesn't. What's an adventure without some boppin' tunes? Here is the best music. I know, I was surprised too. But not only do both captains get renditions of both of their themes, I just vibe with the overworld themes a lot more than any other game. 4 has nice tracks that feel like you're being relaxed at a spa or trying to concentrate on a test, but 2's feels like video game music, and for that, it gets points for me. 1's is great, but they often feel a bit outdated or not as good as the even-numbered titles, while 3's goes for more realistic nature-sounding things, and that's not a bad thing. I just find it a little boring when compared to the rest of these. Music can greatly help with the game's feel and overall tone, but atmosphere is the real tone winner. Here's how the games stack up when it comes to theirs. I feel like this is a no-brainer given the sheer fact that Pikmin 1 is all atmosphere at the end of the day. The other games have one, but 1's is a lot more quiet and isolating that isn't able to be replicated with the wider cast of the other games. It's just you, your tricolored children, and a will to go home versus the world, and I think that's something that makes the first game unique. 2 doesn't really have an atmosphere besides just being bigger, while 3 and 4 go for relaxed and subdued tones in their approaches, and it mostly just boils down to what you like in a series like this. And the sense of community of 4 is great, but sometimes you just want to be alone so you can stop and think some things through, you know? And now that those are done, without further ado, the final ranking. Going from worst to best, we have... Coming in at the bottom, we have Pikmin 2. Y'all knew this was coming. While I can appreciate what Pikmin 2 tries to do in terms of its shakeup to what the first game did, the cave layout and random difficulty spikes are just not what I'm here for in a video game. Hard games can be fun, but not when it feels like it's at the whim of the game itself whether or not you're going to suffer. Not even struggle, just suffer. Not to mention, it introduced the worst character in the franchise, and I can't forgive it for that. I'd rather Sheila come back, or even the president, than this loathsome little toad. Next up, we have Pikmin 1, the OG, the vintage, the retro, the simple. For all of Pikmin 1's faults as a game, it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Its only noteworthy crime is coming first as a tech demo of sorts, but it's short, sweet, to the point, melancholic with a dash of optimism, but overall, it's just a damn good time. The replayability of this game in particular is an asset I wish we got in more games. The price of games has stayed the same, more or less, but the expectation has ballooned and everything needing to be bigger and grander, so products often outstay their welcome on the basis of an open world concept that doesn't meet its need to satisfy. Pikmin 1 doesn't do that. It's just long enough to keep you going, but short enough to be satisfying, and that's something to be proud of. Our Our second place winner is Pikmin 3. This game is rather hard to rank because while it's good, every game around it does something it does better, but we've already been over that. It's a game I would call greater than the sum of its parts, because its cast is so well written and fun to spend time with that the fact that it's less challenging than 2 and more cheering than 1 is made up for. A lot of people say that it's too easy as its main point of criticism, but honestly, I don't think a game can ever be too easy. It can certainly be too easy for you, but different skill sets should be allowed to be out there, and games made with those people in mind. The addition of the challenge modes and even the difficulty options in general make this point for me. I have similar feelings to this game as I do Princess Peach Showtime. Just because it was easy doesn't make it not fun. It's a game designed to be charming and fun and breezy for people who want to have a relaxed time, and I think more games should be like that aren't 16-bit pixel sprite-based life sims. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial when I say AAA games should be accessible to most people, and I think Pikmin 3 nails that, while also just being a nice story with characters I find enjoyable and a mechanic that asks me to make the game as challenging or lackadaisical as I please. And by sheer process of elimination, we have our winner, Pikmin 4. It's simply inarguable, unless you're one of those weird people who get protective over 2, but 4 has the best of every game. It's got the caves like 2 that have a decent ramp up and challenge for once, with charming characters to interact with like in 3, it literally has Pikmin 1 in it, and in general, it just has the best the series has to offer. Going into this project, I was up in the air on which one would be in first place, seeing as 3 is my personal favorite, but after looking at it objectively, 4 outshines 3 by enough that I can't justify putting it first. Its characters, its world design, its aesthetic, its length before the postgame, its everything is just perfect. The only thing that would send it over the top is if they added a difficulty mode later in an update, but otherwise, Pikmin 4 is simply the best. I didn't want to believe the hype of the new shiny thing that tends to happen in modern games, but here it fits because I played the game twice and after knowing what I'm doing, it still took me a long time to beat it again, and it was still fun to go through despite the 1 or 2 dim spots, and that is an accomplishment in and of itself. Thank you for watching this. I hope you enjoyed my overly extended love letter to a new franchise in my life, and a man I would literally murder someone for. This wasn't the biggest project I've taken on to date, you all know that one, but it is one that I've been putting just as much care and attention into because I wanted to share my love of something my love loves with the world, and to give him something to watch over and over again if he wants. If you did enjoy this, I'd appreciate if you would like, comment, subscribe, and do all those fun things. I also have a Discord and a Patreon if you want to join the community or help support my work and Red. And if you can't, sharing this around is also fine by me. And I'm sorry if I shit on your favorite character or your favorite game. I don't want to come off like you're a bad person for liking Louie or Pikmin 2. I just personally don't. If you want, you're more than welcome to tell me why you like him, or really anything you disagree with me on. A new point of view is always a good idea in my mind. My name is Chris, and I hope you have a fractastic, pictastic day.